I sat at the Thanksgiving table watching my mother carve the turkey with practiced precision. The dining room smelled of rosemary and sage, but tension hung heavier than gravy steam. My brother Marcus adjusted his medical school class ring while our father poured wine. When I reached for the cranberry sauce, my mother's knife slammed down. "You're just a burden, always have been." The words sliced deeper than any blade could. Marcus laughed, adding, "At least I make this family proud." I set down my fork, stood, and walked out forever. The drive back to my apartment stretched endlessly through empty holiday streets. My hands wouldn't stop trembling against the steering wheel, those words echoing in my mind like a broken record. Cars sat parked in driveways where families gathered in warm light sharing gratitude instead of cruelty. I pulled into my building's garage and sat there for 20 minutes trying to process what had just happened. Inside my kitchen, I poured myself a glass of water with shaking hands. The silence felt strange after years of noisy family dinners. My laptop sat closed on the counter, holding a secret I'd kept for 3 years. Tonight felt like the right time to finally act on what I'd been considering for months. Opening my banking app required 3 attempts because my fingers kept hitting wrong numbers. When the screen finally loaded, the evidence stared back at me in neat digital rows. Every month for 36 months, $2,400 had left my account. The payments went directly to my parents' mortgage company, automatically scheduled so I'd never miss one. 3 years ago, my mother had come to me crying. They were behind on payments, she said. The bank was threatening foreclosure. My father's hours at the factory had been cut, and they were drowning. She begged me not to tell Marcus because he was stressed with medical school. As the older sister, wouldn't I help save our family home? I'd been working 2 jobs then. My main position at the accounting firm barely covered my own rent and student loans. The weekend shifts at the bookstore were supposed to fund my savings account, maybe let me take a vacation someday. Instead, every penny went to keeping a roof over my parents' heads. The irony burned now as I scrolled through 3 years of sacrifices. While I ate ramen noodles and canceled Netflix to save $12 monthly, my mother told everyone at church about Marcus's generosity. She'd stand in her Sunday dress, clutching her pearls, praising her doctor son who took care of everything. The other mothers would coo with envy while I sat in the back pew invisible despite my empty bank account. My phone buzzed with incoming texts. Aunt Helen wanted to know why I'd left so suddenly. Cousin Rachel asked if I was feeling sick. Uncle Tony said my mother was crying, wondering what she'd done wrong. The performance had begun, already painting me as the ungrateful daughter who ruined Thanksgiving. I opened a new browser tab and logged into the mortgage company's website. The auto-pay settings page loaded slowly as if giving me time to reconsider. But there was no hesitation left in me. I clicked Cancel Automatic Payments and confirmed the change. Effective immediately, no more money would flow from my account to theirs. Next came the screenshots. Every single payment I'd made got captured and saved to a folder labeled Evidence. The transaction history showed the total $86,400. That number represented birthdays spent working, holidays sacrificed for overtime, pay dreams deferred indefinitely. I thought about calling the bank to ensure the cancellation processed correctly, but decided against it. Let them figure it out when the next payment didn't arrive. Let them scramble to understand why their safety net had disappeared. Let Marcus, their golden child who supposedly handled everything, step up to the responsibility they'd falsely assigned him. My apartment felt different now, like I was seeing it clearly for the first time. The secondhand furniture didn't embarrass me anymore. The generic prints from discount stores weren't shameful. This space represented honest living bills paid with my own labor independence earned through sacrifice. Unlike my childhood home built on lies and maintained through deception, everything here belonged authentically to me. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window watching the city lights twinkle below. Somewhere across town, my family was probably finishing dessert-spinning stories about my dramatic exit. They had no idea their carefully constructed narrative was about to collapse. The mortgage payment due in 5 days wouldn't arrive. The December payment would fail too. By January, the notices would start. Part of me felt guilty for what would follow. Another part, buried deeper, felt something else entirely. Relief mixed with vindication pain transforming into power. They'd called me a burden while spending my money. They'd laughed at my sacrifice while building their lies on my foundation. Now they'd learn what real burden felt like when the bills came due without my silent support. My phone continued buzzing with messages I didn't read. The family group chat exploded with activity notifications piling up like autumn leaves. I put the device on silent and closed my eyes. For the first time in 3 years, I felt the weight of false obligation lifting from my shoulders. Tomorrow would bring consequences, questions, confrontations. Tonight I just needed to breathe in my own space, freed from the suffocating dynamics of unappreciated sacrifice. The city hummed with life beyond my window. Other families were navigating their own dramas, their own revelations, their own moments of choosing self-preservation over toxic loyalty. I raised my mug of tea in a quiet toast to all of us, who finally found the courage to stop enabling those who saw our love as weakness. The real feast hadn't been at that table I'd left. It waited in the future I'd just chosen, where respect and reciprocity would flavor every meal. 3 days after Thanksgiving, my doorbell rang just past midnight. The sound jolted me from restless sleep, heart pounding as I checked the security camera. Marcus stood in the hallway, swaying slightly, his usually pristine appearance completely disheveled. His medical school polo with stained hair pointing in different directions, and even through the grainy footage I could see his bloodshot eyes. I almost didn't answer. 3 days of silence from him after that scene at dinner, and now he appeared at my door in the middle of the night. But something in his posture, the way his shoulders curved inward like he was caving into himself, made me unlock the deadbolt. The smell hit me first, whiskey mixed with something sour like he'd been sick. He pushed past me without invitation, stumbling toward my couch and collapsing face first into the cushions. His shoulders started shaking and sounds I'd never heard from my brother filled my small living room. Marcus, the golden child, the family pride, was sobbing like a broken child. "I can't do it anymore," he mumbled into the throw pillow. "I can't keep pretending." I stood frozen by the door, still processing this invasion of my space. Part of me wanted to throw him out, let him experience rejection like I had, but curiosity won. I closed the door and perched on the chair across from him, maintaining distance while he unraveled. "They're going to find out," he gasped between sobs. "Everyone will know I'm a fraud." The story spilled out in broken pieces. Marcus hadn't graduated medical school. The graduation photo on our parents' mantle, the one they showed everyone who visited, he'd paid a graphic designer online to Photoshop him into a Johns Hopkins ceremony. The residency acceptance letter framed in the living room, forged using templates he found on medical student forums. "I failed out second year," he confessed, finally lifting his head. Mascara ran down his face. When had he started wearing makeup? Failed anatomy twice. Failed biochemistry. They put me on academic probation, then dismissed me. That was 2 years ago. 2 years. I'd been paying the mortgage while he perpetuated this elaborate fiction for 2 entire years. My mind raced through family gatherings where he'd discussed his rotations and patient encounters. The technical jargon, the hospital stories, the casual mentions of procedures he'd observed, all fabricated. "Where do you actually work?" I asked, voice steadier than my emotions. "Vitamin Universe in the mall." Fresh tears started. "I'm a sales associate, 32 years old, selling supplements to gym bros and worried mothers, making $15 an hour plus commission." The prestigious Hopkins ID badge he'd flash at family events, a carefully crafted fake. The scrubs our mother had proudly purchased, costume pieces for his performance. He'd studied medical terminology online, watched surgical videos, memorized enough to fool our parents and their friends. "The debt," he whispered. "You have no idea about the debt." Student loans for 6 years of university plus 2 medical school years totaled $190,000. Credit cards maxed from maintaining the illusion buying rounds at bars to seem successful, expensive clothes to look the part. A luxury car lease he couldn't afford. He discovered online gambling, trying to win enough to fix everything, instead digging deeper. Total debt over $200,000. I've been getting notices, he continued. Default warnings, court summons. I used Mom and Dad's address for everything, but I intercept the mail when I can. They'll find out soon, maybe this week. I poured him water, watching him struggle to hold the glass steady. This broken person bore no resemblance to the confident brother who'd laughed at our mother's cruelty 3 days ago. The mask had shattered, revealing someone drowning in deception. Why didn't you tell them when you failed? I asked. You don't understand, he said. I'm all they have. Their entire identity revolves around having a doctor's son. Mom introduces herself as Marcus's mother, you know, the one at Johns Hopkins. Dad tells everyone at the factory about his boy who's going to cure cancer. How could I destroy that? So you destroyed yourself instead. He nodded miserably. And now I'm destroying them too. When they find out the mortgage isn't paid, they'll expect me to handle it. The successful doctor's son should easily cover one payment right. Except I have $17 in my checking account and a maxed credit line. The revelation hung between us like smoke. My parents had built their golden child into a false idol, and he'd crumbled under the weight of their expectations. While they'd called me a burden, their pride and joy was the one truly dragging them toward disaster. There's more, he said quietly. I know about the money. Your money. My spine straightened. What money? The mortgage payments. I know you've been making them. Mom told me last year when she was drunk at Christmas. She laughed about it, said you were so eager to help that you never questioned why they needed it. Said you'd always been too soft-hearted for your own good. Rage flooded through me, hot and purifying. They'd known. They'd laughed. They'd taken my sacrifice and turned it into entertainment. She said they were teaching you a lesson about family duty, Marcus continued. That you needed to learn your place as the supportive daughter, while I became the family success. They never struggled financially, Guadalupe. Dad got promoted 18 months ago. Mom inherited money from Great Aunt Susan. They vacation in Florida every February and tell you they're visiting Dad's sick brother who doesn't exist. The room spun. Every struggle, every skipped meal, every declined social invitation, because I couldn't afford it all, unnecessary. They'd stolen not just my money, but 3 years of my life, watching me deprive myself for their amusement. I should have told you, Marcus said, but I was terrified. If you stopped paying, they'd expect me to start, and I couldn't. So I kept quiet like a coward, letting you suffer to maintain my lie. He struggled to stand, swaying dangerously. I'm sorry for everything. For that night, for the lies, for being too weak to protect you. You were never the burden, Lupe. I was. I am. I helped him to the bathroom when nausea held his hair while he emptied his stomach of whiskey and shame. This wasn't how I'd imagined confronting my family's deception. In my fantasies, I'd been powerful, vindicated. Instead, I sat on my bathroom floor at 1 a.m, comforting the broken brother who'd participated in my exploitation. After I settled him on the couch with blankets and a trash can nearby, I sat in my kitchen thinking. Marcus's confession changed everything and nothing simultaneously. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing they'd acted from cruelty rather than need. But it also freed me from any lingering guilt about canceling the payments. They'd created this situation through greed and manipulation. Let them solve it without their designated burden. As dawn broke through my windows, I made coffee and watched my brother sleep fitfully. He looked younger without his practiced doctor persona, almost like the boy who'd once shared his Halloween candy with me. That child existed somewhere under layers of lies and pressure. Maybe losing everything would help him find himself again. My phone showed 47 missed calls from our parents. The mortgage company had probably notified them about the canceled autopay. Reality was knocking at their door with an overdue notice. I deleted the voicemails without listening and blocked their numbers. Marcus could face them when he sobered up. I was done being anyone's solution to self-created problems. 2 weeks crawled by in relative peace. I'd established new routines that didn't revolve around managing family crises or checking bank balances obsessively. Marcus had left my apartment that morning after his confession, ashamed and hungover, promising to figure things out on his own. I'd changed my phone number, giving it only to work contacts and 2 close friends who'd never betrayed my trust. The Saturday afternoon doorbell felt different from midnight interruptions. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery driver holding a certified letter. My signature on the electronic pad felt like signing for trouble. The return address confirmed it. My father's precise handwriting spelled out my childhood home's address. Inside my apartment, I opened the letter carefully. 3 pages of my father's cramped script filled legal pad paper, the same kind he'd used for grocery lists when I was young. But this wasn't about milk and bread. This was about money and betrayal wrapped in parental authority. Guadalupe. It began already wrong since he'd always called me Lupe. Your childish tantrum has created serious problems for this family. The mortgage company contacted us about missed payments. Your mother is beside herself with worry. How could you abandon your responsibility without warning? I laughed sharp and bitter. Responsibility, as if their financial obligations had ever been mine to carry. The second page escalated. We know you're upset about Thanksgiving. Your mother's words came out wrong. She meant you burden yourself too much trying to help everyone. Marcus understood immediately, but you've always been too sensitive, taking everything personally. Gaslighting spread across the page like spilled ink. They were rewriting history, painting me as an oversensitive child who misunderstood obvious affection. But the third page revealed their real panic. The bank will begin foreclosure proceedings if December's payment isn't received within 10 days. I'm sure you don't want your parents homeless at Christmas. Resume the payments immediately, and we can discuss this misunderstanding at Sunday dinner. Your mother will make your favorite pot roast as an apology for the confusion. My phone rang with an unknown number. Against better judgment, I answered. Finally, my father's voice crackled through. This nonsense has gone far enough. How did you get this number? Your employer was very helpful when I explained the family emergency. Of course, he'd manipulated the receptionist. Why is the mortgage unpaid? Guadalupe, ask your pride and joy. Silence stretched across the line, heavy with calculation. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from demanding to resigned. Don't play games. We both know Marcus couldn't handle this. That's why we've depended on you. Both know what exactly do we both know? A sigh rattled through the speaker. Fine. Yes, we know you've been paying it. We've known all along. But what's the harm? You make good money at that firm. Marcus has medical school debt. It made sense for you to help until he's established. Except Marcus isn't in medical school. Hasn't been for 2 years. The silence changed quality, becoming dense with suppressed information. He knew. The realization hit like cold water. He'd already known about Marcus. That's temporary, he finally said. He'll reapply once he sorts some things out. Until then, maintaining appearances is crucial. Do you know what it would do to your mother if people found out she'd be humiliated? So you let me pay for your house while lying about it to everyone. We didn't lie. We simply allowed people to draw their own conclusions when we praised our successful children. If they assumed Marcus was helping financially, that's their interpretation. You literally told people he paid your mortgage. We said our son helped with expenses. You're also our child, aren't you? Though you'd never know it from how you've behaved lately. The manipulation was masterful in its cruelty. Acknowledge the truth while twisting it into my failing. Accept no accountability while demanding continued compliance. Dad, when did you get promoted at the factory? Another pause. Who told you about that? When did Mom inherit from Great Aunt Susan? How much do you have saved while taking my money? Our finances aren't your concern. They became my concern when you made me pay your mortgage unnecessarily. His voice hardened. Unnecessarily, we're your parents. Supporting us is your duty. We raised you, fed you, clothed you for 18 years. This small contribution doesn't begin to repay that debt. Small contribution, I've given you $86,000. And we gave you life. Are you really putting a price on that? The conversation spiraled into deeper dysfunction. He revealed their philosophy. I existed to support them and Marcus. My role was predetermined, the responsible daughter who sacrificed silently while they elevated their son. They decided this when I was young, seeing my eagerness to please as evidence I'd been born for servitude. We even set aside your college fund for Marcus's medical school, he admitted. We knew you'd manage with loans and work. You always figured things out. Marcus needed more support to reach his potential. My college struggles suddenly made sense. They'd claimed poverty when I'd asked for help, said the factory was cutting wages. I'd worked 3 jobs during sophomore year, nearly dropping out from exhaustion. Meanwhile, they'd funded Marcus's fraternity dues and spring break trips with money designated for my education. Here's what's going to happen. My father continued, his manager voice emerging. You'll resume the mortgage payments immediately. We'll forget this rebellion occurred. Your mother will graciously forgive your outburst at dinner. The family returns to normal. No. Excuse me. No. Pay your own mortgage with your promotion money and inheritance. Or ask Marcus to use his doctor's salary. Oh, wait, he can't because you pressured him into a breakdown pretending to be something he's not. You vindictive little... He caught himself. We're offering you a chance to fix this peacefully. Don't force us to explore other options. What other options? I owe you nothing legally or morally. We'll see about that. Your mother keeps excellent records. Every birthday gift, every Christmas present, every doctor visit we paid for until you turned 18. Itemized and totaled. You'd be surprised how much raising an ungrateful child costs. The threat was laughable but showed their desperation. They'd actually calculated the cost of parenting, prepared to present a bill for basic care. The sickness of it stole my breath. Send me the invoice, I said. I'll forward it to my lawyer who specializes in elder financial abuse. I'm sure the authorities would find it interesting that you've been taking money under false pretenses from your daughter for 3 years. You wouldn't dare embarrass the family like that. The family embarrassed itself when it decided I was born to be exploited. I hung up before he could respond, immediately blocking the unknown number. My hands shook with adrenaline and liberation. They'd finally admitted everything. The purposeful exploitation, the conscious decision to sacrifice my future for Marcus's facade, the calculated emotional manipulation designed to keep me compliant. Within an hour, 17 relatives had tried calling from various numbers. The family phone tree activated, spreading whatever narrative my parents crafted. I turned off my phone entirely, needing silence to process the conversation's revelations. They'd stolen my college fund. While I'd eaten 99-cent pasta and walked to campus in snow to save bus fare, my designated money had paid for Marcus's comfortable failure. Every struggle I'd faced had been manufactured unnecessary suffering designed to keep me grateful for scraps while they hoarded resources. But their plan had backfired spectacularly. Instead of creating a compliant servant, they'd forged someone strong enough to walk away. The burden they'd assigned me had become armor against their manipulation. Every sacrifice had taught me self-reliance. Every struggle had built resilience they couldn't break. I pulled out the folder of bank statements showing 3 years of payments, evidence of exploitation documented in neat electronic rows. My father had threatened vague other options, but I held real proof of their deception. If they wanted to escalate, I'd respond with facts rather than emotional manipulation. Outside my window, the city continued its weekend rhythm. Normal families doing normal things, some dysfunctional, but few reaching these calculated depths of exploitation. I'd spent 28 years believing I belonged to something worth preserving. Now I understood the truth. I'd been born into a transaction valued only for what I could provide. The mortgage would come due in 10 days. Then the notices would begin, the consequences would compound, the facade would crack. They'd scramble to maintain appearances while their house of cards collapsed. And I'd be here, building something real from the ashes of their lies, finally free from the burden of being their solution to self-created problems. The revelations from my father's phone call haunted me for days. His casual admission about stealing my college fund played on repeat while I tried to focus on work spreadsheets. They'd planned my exploitation before I even understood what college meant. Every struggle had been orchestrated, every hardship deliberately imposed to keep me desperate enough to remain useful. By Wednesday evening, my curiosity transformed into determination. If they'd hidden the college fund theft for a decade, what else lay buried beneath their respectable facade? I needed to understand the full scope of their deception before they attempted whatever other options my father had threatened. Finding a private investigator in the digital age proved surprisingly simple. Reviews, credentials, and specialties all available with quick searches. Patricia Sanderson specialized in financial investigations, particularly family fraud cases. Her office occupied a discreet corner suite downtown, close enough to visit during lunch breaks. Family financial abuse is more common than people realize, Patricia explained during our initial meeting. Her gray hair pulled into a professional bun matched her no-nonsense demeanor. Parents exploiting adult children, especially daughters, follows predictable patterns. Tell me what you know. I laid out everything: the mortgage payments, Marcus's fake medical career, my parents' hidden assets, the stolen college fund. Patricia took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Her expression remained neutral throughout the professional mask of someone who'd heard worse. "You want to know what else they're hiding?" she summarized. "Smart move. Forewarned is forearmed, especially if they escalate legally. My retainer is $3,000. I know that seems steep after what you've been through, but family investigations require delicate handling. $3,000 would drain my emergency fund money saved by skipping lunches and wearing shoes until the souls separated. But knowledge felt worth the price. I wrote the check with steady hands, investing in truth rather than lies." Patricia worked quickly. Within 3 days, she called with initial findings that warranted an in-person meeting. I sat across from her desk Friday afternoon, watching her arrange photographs and documents like puzzle pieces, revealing an ugly picture. "Your mother is interesting." Patricia began sliding a photo across the desk. It showed my mother entering Sunshine Community Church, where she'd served as treasurer for 15 years. Pillar of the community, everyone says. Trusted with the finances because who suspects a devoted church lady? The next photos showed different scenes. My mother at an ATM withdrawing cash while looking over her shoulder. At a casino 30 miles from home, feeding bills into slot machines. Shopping at Nordstrom with bags that cost more than my monthly rent. I had a forensic accountant review the church's public financial filings. Patricia continued. Discrepancies dating back 7 years. Small at first $100 here, $500 there. But escalating recently. Last year alone, approximately $40,000 doesn't reconcile properly. My stomach dropped. She's stealing from the church. Allegedly, proving it requires access to internal documents I can't legally obtain. However, the patterns are consistent with embezzlement. Regular cash deposits reported as anonymous donations that never quite match collection plate estimates. Vendor payments to companies that don't appear in any business directories. Classic tactics. Patricia spread bank statements across the desk, certain transactions highlighted in yellow. The mortgage payments I'd been making showed clearly, but now I understood their purpose differently. My mother hadn't just taken my money for unnecessary bills, she'd needed it to cover what she'd stolen. See this pattern? Patricia traced connections between my payments arriving and large cash withdrawals from my parents' account within days. Your money goes in, cash comes out. Untraceable once it leaves the ATM. I believe she's been using your mortgage payments to replace embezzled funds before audits. But why, if they have savings inheritance, my father's promotion? Gambling addiction, most likely. Patricia showed casino surveillance stills. She's there twice weekly minimum. High-limit slots, not penny machines. The shopping appears compulsive too. Classic addiction behaviors funded by embezzlement covered by your payments. The investigation revealed more nauseating details. Fake vendor invoices my mother created payments to Smith Maintenance Services and Johnson Cleaning Supplies companies that existed only on paper bank accounts she controlled. The church's children's ministry had fundraised $30,000 for playground equipment that never materialized. The Youth Mission Trip Fund perpetually fell short of goals despite generous donations. This is sophisticated, Patricia explained. Your mother understands accounting principles. She's created enough legitimate transactions to mask the theft-keeping amounts just below thresholds that trigger mandatory reviews. Without your payments, the scheme would have collapsed years ago. I stared at evidence of my mother's double life. Sunday morning, she stood before congregations wearing modest dresses and pious expressions. Monday through Friday, she systematically robbed those same trusting people. The hypocrisy felt suffocating. There's one more thing, Patricia said, sliding a final document across. I have a source at the church. Apparently there have been whispers about financial irregularities for 2 years. But your mother has something on Pastor Williams. My source wouldn't elaborate, but implied it's serious enough to keep him silent. Blackmail on top of embezzlement. My mother had constructed a criminal enterprise while maintaining her righteous facade. The woman who'd called me a burden was the one dragging everyone into her web of theft and deception. What do I do with this? I asked, overwhelmed by the scope of criminality. That depends on your goals. This evidence alone isn't enough for prosecution. We'd need subpoenaed church records for that. But it's powerful leverage if your parents escalate their demands. They can't risk scrutiny with this much smoke around their finances. I gathered the documents into a folder that felt heavier than paper should. $3,000 had bought me nightmare fuel evidence that my exploitation was merely one tentacle of a larger monster. My mother had built her respectability on theft, maintained it through blackmail, and funded it through her daughter's sacrifice. Driving home, I noticed a church on every corner. How many trusted someone with their donations? How many congregation treasurers had unchecked access to funds meant for charity? My mother had exploited that faith for years, perverting sacred trust into personal gain. That evening, I spread Patricia's findings across my kitchen table. Bank statements, photographs, transaction patterns, a criminal's portfolio hidden beneath pearls and prayer. The woman who'd raised me to be honest had lived as a thief. The mother who preached family values had sacrificed her daughter to fund her sins. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it before recognizing the area code from my hometown. The message was brief. Your mother knows you hired someone to investigate. She wants to meet. Come alone. Patricia had warned this might happen. Good investigators work discreetly, but family investigations inevitably leaked through small-town connections. Someone had noticed her questions reported back through the gossip network that transmitted faster than fiber optic cables. I deleted the text without responding. Let my mother wonder what I knew, what evidence I possessed. Let her feel the uncertainty I'd lived with for years, never knowing when the next financial crisis would demand my sacrifice. The burden had shifted. Now she carried the weight of exposure while I held the power of truth. The meeting request proved something crucial. My mother was scared. The woman who'd dismissed me as a burden now recognized me as a threat. The daughter she'd exploited had transformed into someone dangerous to her carefully constructed lies. Good. Fear might teach lessons that love never could. I locked Patricia's evidence in a safe deposit box at a bank my parents didn't use. Insurance against whatever desperate moves they might attempt. The stolen church funds, the gambling addiction, the sophisticated embezzlement scheme, all documented and protected. If they wanted war, I'd arrived armed with more than emotions. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Not from vengeance or cruelty, but from clarity. Understanding the full picture freed me from false guilt about their financial struggles. They'd never struggled, they'd stolen. Every payment I'd made had enabled crime, not helped family. The burden wasn't mine to carry. It never had been. It belonged to the woman who'd built an empire on theft and called her daughter's love a burden while cashing her checks. Saturday morning arrived with unexpected visitors. I'd been enjoying coffee and the novel experience of a weekend without financial stress when my doorbell rang at 8:30. Through the peephole, I saw an elderly man in a worn cardigan, his face creased with worry lines that seemed carved deeper than his 70-odd years should warrant. Pastor Williams stood at my door holding a manila envelope against his chest, like armor. I'd sat through hundreds of his sermons growing up, watched him baptize babies and comfort grieving families. Now he looked smaller than memory suggested, diminished by whatever weight he carried. "Guadalupe, I apologize for arriving unannounced," he said when I opened the door. "Your mother wouldn't give me your new contact information, so I've been checking with former church youth until someone knew your address. May I come in? What I need to discuss requires privacy." I let him enter, noting how his hands trembled slightly as he settled into my armchair. The same hands that had offered communion now fidgeted with the envelope's edges. Whatever brought him here was eating him alive from inside. "Would you like coffee?" I offered, buying time to process his presence. "That's kind, yes, thank you." I prepared 2 cups while my mind raced. Patricia had mentioned Pastor Williams knew about the financial irregularities, but stayed silent due to blackmail. His appearance at my apartment suggested something had shifted in that dynamic. When I returned with the coffee, he'd spread several documents on my coffee table. His shoulders straightened slightly, as if organizing evidence gave him strength. "I know you've been investigating your mother's activities," he began without preamble. "The private investigator you hired is thorough but discreet. However, small towns have eyes everywhere. Your mother knows you're digging into church finances. How long have you known she was stealing?" His face crumpled at my directness. "Suspected for 3 years. Known for certain the past 18 months. The evidence became undeniable when the children's ministry playground never materialized despite full funding. Yet you said nothing." "No." The word emerged heavy with shame. I remained silent while she robbed families who trusted us. "Let me show you why." He pulled photographs from the envelope. The first showed him at a restaurant sitting across from a young woman who wasn't his wife. The second captured them embracing in a parking lot. The third... I looked away, understanding immediately. "Her name is Melissa," he said quietly. "She was our youth minister until last year, 26 years old. I'm 71, married 47 years. What started as mentorship became something inexcusable. The affair explained everything. My mother had discovered the relationship and weaponized it, ensuring his silence about her embezzlement through mutual destruction. Classic blackmail wrapped in church committee meetings and bake sale planning. Your mother has emails," he continued. "Screenshots of text messages, photographs from security cameras she somehow accessed. She presented them to me 16 months ago, very calmly explaining our new understanding. She'd continue managing church finances without oversight, and I'd continue preaching about honesty every Sunday." "So you let her steal from your congregation to protect your reputation?" "Yes." He met my eyes directly. I prioritized my cowardice over their trust. Told myself it was protecting my wife, the church stability, but those were excuses. I was protecting myself. He showed me more documents, spreadsheets he'd quietly maintained, tracking suspicious transactions. Despite his silence, he'd documented everything: inflated supply costs, mysterious vendor payments, collection plate discrepancies that grew bolder monthly. "Last month, she took the entire children's Christmas charity fund," he said. $17,000 meant for presents for homeless families. Claimed it was transferred to another account for better interest rates, but the money vanished. "Those children will have nothing because of my weakness." Tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. This man who'd preached about truth for decades had lived a fundamental lie, allowing innocent people to suffer for his sins. The congregation's shepherd had let a wolf feast while he cowered. "Why tell me now?" I asked. "Because I'm done hiding. My affair was wrong, catastrophically selfish, but allowing continued theft compounds that sin daily. I've already told my wife everything. She's processing, probably leaving me, which I deserve. Tomorrow I'm confessing to the congregation and board, then contacting authorities about the embezzlement." He pulled out his phone, showing me an email draft addressed to the district attorney. Detailed allegations against my mother supported by his documentation. Once sent, the investigation would begin officially. "I wanted to warn you first," he explained. "Your family will face scrutiny. Your mother will likely blame you for starting the investigation that led to exposure. Things might get very difficult." "They've been difficult my whole life." "I know." Fresh shame crossed his features. "I've watched your family dynamics for years, saw how they elevated Marcus while you served invisibly. Should have intervened, but told myself it wasn't my place. Another cowardice to confess." He gathered his documents, movements showing new purpose. "I'm meeting with church board members individually today, then the authorities Monday. Your mother will know by tonight that her leverage has evaporated. Please be careful. Desperate people take desperate actions." "What about Melissa, the youth minister?" "Left town 6 months ago. Teaching at a school in Oregon, building a real life away from our mistake. She deserves peace after I selfishly disrupted her world." Pastor Williams stood to leave, then paused at my door. "Your mother recently mentioned something concerning. She said if her church activities were exposed, she'd reveal information about you that would destroy your reputation. I don't know what she meant, but please prepare yourself." The warning chilled me. What could she possibly have? I'd lived honestly, paid taxes, never stolen anything. But truth hadn't stopped her from crafting elaborate lies before. Who knew what fiction she'd prepared as insurance? After he left, I called Patricia immediately. She listened to my summary without interrupting, then sighed heavily. "This accelerates everything. Once authorities get involved, your mother will spiral. We need to document any threats she makes, keep evidence of harassment. Consider security cameras for your apartment." "What could she reveal about me? I haven't done anything wrong." "Doesn't matter. Desperate people manufacture evidence. She could claim you were complicit in the embezzlement forged documents, showing you benefited, or something completely fabricated: drug use, inappropriate relationships, financial crimes, anything to muddy waters and create reasonable doubt. The injustice burned. I'd sacrificed everything for family, lived ethically despite their exploitation, and now faced potential slander for exposing their crimes. The burden of being good in a bad family felt heavier than any mortgage payment. That evening, I installed a security camera system, grateful for online tutorials that made the process manageable. The small devices felt like armor against whatever storm approached. I also opened a new bank account at a different institution, moving my savings somewhere my parents couldn't access through social engineering. My phone rang constantly with unknown numbers I didn't answer. The family network had activated, probably spreading my mother's version of events. I could imagine the story: ungrateful daughter trying to destroy godly mother through false accusations. The truth would sound too outlandish compared to her practiced performance. Around 9 o'clock, a text arrived from Marcus. "Mom knows about Pastor Williams visiting you. She's beyond furious. Dad's trying to calm her, but she keeps saying you've ruined everything. Please be safe." So the news had reached her. Somewhere across town, my mother was realizing her carefully constructed scheme was collapsing. The church treasurer who'd stolen with impunity now faced exposure. The woman who'd called me a burden would soon carry the weight of criminal charges. I double-checked my locks, tested the cameras, and settled in for a restless night. Tomorrow would bring new chaos as Pastor Williams continued his confession tour. Monday would see official investigations begin. My mother would fight with whatever weapons she possessed, real or fabricated. But tonight I felt something unexpected: pride. not in the destruction or coming pain, but in the truth finally emerging. Pastor Williams had found courage despite personal cost. I'd refused to enable crime despite family pressure. Even Marcus was slowly choosing honesty over comfortable lies. The burden was shifting to where it belonged, those who'd committed crimes, not those who'd exposed them. My mother would soon learn what real weight felt like when congregation members realized their donations had funded her gambling instead of charity. When homeless children received nothing for Christmas because she'd stolen their allocated presents. When trust broke beyond repair. I opened my laptop and began writing my own statement documenting every payment I'd made, every lie I'd been told, every sacrifice extracted through manipulation. Not for revenge, but for protection. If she wanted to spread lies about me, I'd counter with receipts and bank statements. The woman who'd mastered financial deception had taught her daughter well, not how to steal, but how to document everything, how to protect herself with evidence, how to survive when family became predator instead of protector, lessons she'd never intended to teach, learned despite her intentions. Tomorrow the real storm would begin, but tonight, truth had won its first victory. A 71-year-old pastor had chosen confession over comfortable deception. His courage reminded me that burden and blessing often intertwined. The weight of truth could crush or strengthen, depending on how you carried it. I chose strength. The burden of being called worthless had forged someone strong enough to expose the lies. Let them come with whatever fabrications they'd prepared. I had truth evidence and the knowledge that sacrificing for users wasn't love, it was enabling. The real burden had always been theirs. I was just the first one brave enough to stop carrying it. Tuesday morning started with 43 missed calls from unknown numbers. I'd silenced my phone the night before, needing rest, before whatever chaos my mother orchestrated. The voicemail box was full, probably relatives recruited for her damage control campaign. I deleted them all without listening, then blocked each number methodically. Work provided temporary refuge. Spreadsheets and client accounts demanded focus, offering numerical clarity instead of family dysfunction. My supervisor noticed my productivity spike, joking that I should take family holidays more often if they motivated such efficiency. If only she knew the holiday in question had shattered everything instead of celebrating it. At lunch, my phone buzzed with a call from St. Mary's Hospital. The number wasn't blocked because I'd never imagined needing to exclude medical facilities. The voice on the other end was professionally calm but urgent. Miss Guadalupe Rodriguez. This is Dr. Sarah Chen at St. Mary's Emergency Department. You're listed as Marcus Rodriguez's emergency contact. He's been admitted following an overdose incident. His condition is stable, but he's asking for you. The sandwich I'd been eating turned to cardboard in my mouth. Despite everything, the thought of Marcus in a hospital bed hit differently than parental manipulation. He was still my little brother underneath the lies, the boy who'd shared his Halloween candy and drawn me pictures in crayon. St. Mary's sat 15 minutes from my office, a drive that felt both eternal and too quick. The emergency department smelled of disinfectant and desperation, families clustered in waiting areas with worried faces. The triage nurse directed me to room 12 after checking identification. Marcus looked smaller than memory suggested, dwarfed by hospital equipment and white sheets. Monitors beeped steadily. IV lines feeding clear fluid into bruised arms. His eyes were closed but opened when I entered, red-rimmed and hollow. "You came," he whispered, voice raw. "Wasn't sure you would." "What happened?" Everything fell apart after Pastor Williams started talking. Mom went completely insane. Dad tried damage control, but she was beyond reasoning. Then creditors started calling the house because I couldn't intercept mail anymore. They know everything now. He struggled to sit up, wincing at the movement. Mom confronted me Sunday night, said I was worthless, a failure who'd destroyed the family name. Dad just stood there while she screamed about how I'd ruined their reputation, how the church community would exile them. 3 hours of pure rage. "So you tried to kill yourself?" "Not exactly." He looked away. Maybe. I don't know. Started taking anxiety pills to calm down, but they weren't working. Took more. Then remembered all the pills Mom had been sneaking into my food over the years. Figured if they wanted me sedated and compliant, might as well finish the job. Marcus, what do you mean about Mom sneaking pills into your food? His laugh was bitter, devoid of humor. Found out 6 months ago. Started getting suspicious about why I felt so foggy after family dinners. Bought a drug testing kit online. Positive for benzodiazepines every time I ate her food. The revelation shouldn't have shocked me after everything else, but it did. Drugging her own son to maintain control transcended previous betrayals. This was criminal assault poisoning disguised as maternal care. She started after I failed out of med school. He continued. Said later it was to help with my anxiety, but I never asked for help. Never consented. The drugs made everything worse, couldn't think clearly. Couldn't motivate myself to fix anything. Just existed in this fog while she managed my life. He'd saved evidence, he told me. Empty food containers with residue photos of pills hidden in her bathroom, even recorded conversations where she'd admitted to helping him stay calm. The documentation lived in cloud storage, protected by passwords she didn't know existed. Why didn't you go to police? With what credibility failed medical student with gambling debts accuses respected church treasurer? Besides, she's my mom. Despite everything, some part of me kept hoping she'd stop, that she loved me enough to let me recover naturally. A nurse entered to check vitals, giving us a moment of silence. The suicide attempt story grew more complex with each detail. This wasn't just despair over exposure, it was escape from years of chemical control, a desperate bid for agency, even if it meant death. I left a note, Marcus said after the nurse departed. Detailed everything. The drugging, the medical school lies they forced me to maintain, even stuff about you they probably hoped I'd never share. It's in my apartment, unless they've already broken in to destroy evidence. What stuff about me? The college fund theft was just the beginning, Lupe. They've been documenting your life for years, building contingencies. Photos taken without consent, financial records accessed illegally, even hired someone to follow you occasionally. Mom called it insurance against you becoming too independent. My skin crawled imagining strangers watching me, photographing daily routines for my mother's files. The invasion of privacy felt violent, another violation from people who'd already taken too much. How many normal moments had been surveilled and stored? There's more, he said, exhaustion creeping into his voice. They were planning something before this explosion. Dad mentioned paperwork that would transfer debts to you, make you financially responsible for everything. Identity theft, basically, but family style, where they'd guilt you into not pressing charges. The monitor beeped faster as his heart rate increased with agitation. I put a calming hand on his arm, feeling bones too prominent through hospital gowns. My brother was disappearing physically and mentally crushed between parental expectations and chemical restraints. The psychiatrist wants to keep me 72 hours minimum, he said. Suicide watch. But honestly, this is the safest I've felt in years. They can't reach me here. Can't drug my food or scream about reputation. Just quiet and professional care. I'll get your note from the apartment. Make sure it's safe. Keys are in my jacket pocket. Be careful if Mom figures out where I hid things, she'll destroy everything. Check the freezer behind the ice maker. Sealed plastic bag with USB drives and documents. I found his keys among personal belongings the nurses had bagged. The weight felt significant, like holding evidence that could finally prove the depth of dysfunction we'd survived. Marcus closed his eyes again, exhaustion winning over consciousness. Lupe, he called as I reached the door. I'm sorry for Thanksgiving, for keeping quiet, for being too weak to protect either of us. You deserved a real brother, not whatever I became. You were drugged and manipulated. That's not weakness, it's survival. Maybe, but you survived without becoming them. That's the difference. Leaving the hospital felt like emerging from underwater. The normal world continued outside. People shopping, working, living lives, untouched by such calculated cruelty. I envied their ignorance of how deeply parents could betray their children's trust. Marcus's apartment was a 20-minute drive through suburban streets. I'd only visited twice before, both times noting how sparse it seemed for someone supposedly earning doctor money. Now I understood $15 an hour at Vitamin Universe didn't fund much decoration. The apartment was unlocked door slightly ajar. My pulse accelerated as I pushed inside, hand reaching for pepper spray on my keychain. The living room looked ransacked, cushions thrown aside, drawers, emptied papers scattered like snow. They'd beaten me here. Of course they had. While I'd sat with Marcus, our parents had searched for evidence to destroy. His laptop was missing important-looking documents torn to pieces, but they'd missed the freezer, too focused on obvious hiding spots. Behind the ice maker, exactly where promised, was a sealed bag containing 3 USB drives and a manila folder. I grabbed it quickly, stuffing the evidence into my purse. Whatever these drives contained, our parents had failed to find them. Small victory in an ocean of violations. Footsteps in the hallway made me freeze. The door opened, revealing our father looking haggard and older than his 60 years. He startled seeing me. Then his expression hardened into familiar disappointment. "Visiting your brother. Too late for that, he's already destroyed everything with his weakness. He's in the hospital after a suicide attempt. Did you know, do you care? Drama runs in his genetics, apparently. First you with your tantrum, now him with his pills. Neither of you inherited strength." The casualness of dismissing his son's near death broke something in me. This man had helped create us, then collaborated in our destruction for image management. Father was just a biological term he'd never earned the emotional weight it implied. He has evidence of Mom drugging him. It's going to police along with everything else. His face paled slightly before recovering. "No one will believe an unstable gambling addict. We're respectable people. You're delusional if you think anyone would choose your word over ours. Pastor Williams already has. The church board too. Criminal investigations start this week. Your respectability is already crumbling. Because of you..." The mask finally slipped, revealing raw fury. "Everything was fine until you got prideful. One comment at dinner and you destroyed a lifetime of reputation. Now Marcus follows your example with his pathetic gesture. Mom drugged your son. She stole from the church. You helped cover it up while maintaining a secret family. But sure blame me for exposing crimes instead of accepting responsibility for committing them." His face went from pale to purple. "You know nothing about responsibility. We gave you life, raised you, provided everything. While stealing my college fund and charging me rent through emotional manipulation. Parents who actually love their children don't keep spreadsheets of basic care costs." I pushed past him toward the door, clutching evidence that would help prove pattern behavior. He grabbed my arm fingers, digging in with surprising strength. "Whatever you think you're accomplishing, it won't work. We have resources connections. You're one bitter daughter against established community pillars. This rebellion will only hurt you." I yanked free, adrenaline overcoming fear. "Good thing I'm used to hurt. You trained me well for that." The drive home was a blur of processing violations. They'd drugged Marcus, surveilled me, planned identity theft. Each revelation peeled back another layer of calculated evil, dressed as parenting. At my apartment, I immediately uploaded the USB contents to multiple cloud services. The files were devastating medical records, showing prescription medications in our mother's name, matching what Marcus tested positive for recorded conversations about managing the children, financial documents outlining the identity theft plan. Most disturbing were photographs of me spanning years, entering my apartment at work, shopping for groceries, hundreds of images taken without knowledge or consent, building a stalking portfolio for unknown purposes. The violation felt total privacy, stripped by the people supposed to protect it. I forwarded everything to Patricia, my investigator, and created backup copies for law enforcement. The evidence painted a picture of criminal parents who'd viewed children as possessions to control through any means necessary. Chemical restraint for Marcus, Financial exploitation for me, all wrapped in respectability and church attendance. That night, I deadbolted my door and checked window locks twice. My parents had revealed themselves as more dangerous than imagined. Drugging and stalking weren't just toxic parenting. They were felonies that could result in serious prison time. The burden had evolved from emotional weight to legal evidence. Each document Marcus saved, every photo they'd taken, all the financial manipulation, it created a trail leading directly to criminal charges. They'd built their own cases through arrogance and assumption of eternal control. My phone showed 18 missed calls from the hospital. Marcus was stable, asking for me, but I couldn't return yet. First, I needed to ensure his evidence reached proper authorities. His survival meant nothing if they could silence or manipulate him again. Tomorrow, I'd file police reports, meet with prosecutors, begin the legal process of holding them accountable. Tonight, I sat surrounded by evidence of unfathomable betrayal, grateful for locks between me and parents who'd proven capable of anything. The burden of truth had become a weapon. They'd created it through their crimes, handed it to their children through abuse, then acted shocked when we refused to carry it silently anymore. Marcus's overdose wasn't weakness. It was the last desperate act of someone strong enough to document his destruction before attempting escape. We'd both survive this, different from who we'd been scarred but not broken. The parents who'd called us burdens would soon understand real weight criminal charges, public exposure, legal consequences. They'd trained us too well in documentation and evidence. Now their own methods would convict them. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes after accepting hard truths. I'd spent Wednesday delivering evidence to various authorities, watching professional faces shift from skepticism to alarm as they reviewed documentation. The police detective assigned to Marcus's case had started with routine questions before calling in supervisors once she understood the scope. Now I sat in a law office downtown across from Jennifer Walsh, the attorney Patricia had recommended. Jennifer specialized in family law with a focus on adult child abuse cases. Her desk held copies of everything I'd provided police plus additional documentation Patricia had uncovered. "This is one of the most comprehensive abuse cases I've encountered," Jennifer said, adjusting her reading glasses. The drugging alone would warrant serious charges, but combined with embezzlement, stalking, and planned identity theft, your parents created a prosecutorial gift through their own documentation. I just want it to stop. The control manipulation, the constant threats. It will, but first we need to discuss something crucial you might have overlooked. She pulled out a folder marked with my name. 5 years ago, did you sign papers your parents claimed were insurance forms? The memory surfaced slowly. I'd been 23 visiting for Christmas. My father had presented documents casually mentioning something about life insurance beneficiaries and medical decisions if they became incapacitated. I'd signed without reading carefully, trusting them despite years of evidence suggesting I shouldn't. "These aren't insurance forms," Jennifer continued. "They're comprehensive, durable power of attorney documents. Your parents made you their legal agent for financial and healthcare decisions, effective immediately, not just upon incapacitation." I don't understand. Why would they give me that power? Control that cuts both ways. They likely planned to use these if they needed to transfer debts or access your accounts. What they didn't anticipate was you discovering the documents first. Legally, you currently control all their assets. The room tilted slightly as implications registered. While they'd been planning identity theft and financial manipulation, they'd accidentally handed me complete legal authority over their finances. The irony was almost poetic. Their weapon had become my shield. "Can I actually use these?" "Absolutely. The documents are properly notarized and filed with the state. I've already verified their authenticity. You have immediate access to freeze accounts, redirect mail, even sell property if necessary. It's unusually broad power they probably never expected you to discover or utilize." She explained the options methodically. I could freeze their assets during criminal proceedings, preventing them from hiring expensive lawyers or fleeing. I could access financial records to help forensic accountants trace embezzlement. Most importantly, I could protect remaining church funds from further theft. There's something else, Jennifer said, producing another document. Your grandmother's will. Did you know she left you in charge of a trust? My parents said she only left small keepsakes to grandchildren. Another lie. She established separate trusts for you and Marcus, specifically structured to prevent parental access. Yours matured on your 30th birthday 6 months ago. Your parents were notified as previous trustees, but clearly didn't inform you. The betrayals kept compounding. Not only had they stolen my college fund, they'd hidden an inheritance designed to protect me from exactly their type of financial abuse. My grandmother had seen through her daughter's greed and tried to shield us from beyond the grave. The trust contains significant assets, Jennifer continued. Commercial real estate generating rental income technology, stocks from early investments, bonds worth approximately $2 million. Your grandmother was apparently quite savvy with investments. $2 million. I'd been paying my parents' mortgage while secretly wealthy, kept ignorant by those who knew exactly what they were stealing through deception. The cruelty felt infinite watching me struggle while sitting on my own fortune they couldn't touch. I want to use the power of attorney immediately. I said, decision crystallizing. Freeze everything before they can hide more assets or destroy evidence. Jennifer smiled approvingly. I was hoping you'd say that. I've prepared the necessary paperwork. We can file with banks this afternoon. Fair warning, they'll know immediately when cards stop working and accounts freeze. Be prepared for escalation. We spent 2 hours completing forms, making copies, preparing for battle. Jennifer contacted bank managers explaining the situation and legal authority. By 3 o'clock, my parents' financial life had stopped cold. Credit cards declined, checking accounts, frozen, investment portfolios locked. My phone started ringing at 3:17. Unknown numbers. I didn't answer, then Marcus calling from the hospital. Mom just called me screaming, he said, sounding more alert than days prior. Says her card got declined at the grocery store. Dad's ATM won't work. They're panicking about what you've done. Good. Let them feel powerless for once. There's something else. She made threats, Lupe. Said if you don't unfreeze the accounts, she'll release photos that will ruin your career. I don't know what photos she means, but she sounded serious. I know about the stalking photos. They're creepy, but not career-ending. No, she specifically mentioned other ones. Said something about AI and making things look real that weren't. I think she's planning to create fake compromising images. The threat landed like ice water. Deep fake technology had advanced enough to create convincing fabrications. My mother, desperate and cornered, was apparently willing to manufacture pornographic or otherwise damaging images rather than face consequences for actual crimes. Jennifer took the phone when I explained the threat. Marcus, this is Guadalupe's attorney. Did your mother make this threat in voicemail or text? Voicemail, I saved it. Perfect. Attempted extortion, criminal threat, possible cyber harassment. She's adding charges faster than we can file them. Send me that recording immediately. The next hours blurred together. Police detectives arrived at Jennifer's office to hear the extortion threat. FBI agents joined via conference call once the interstate embezzlement connections emerged. The case was expanding beyond family dysfunction into organized crime territory. Your parents aren't just toxic, Detective Morrison explained. They're allegedly part of a multi-state network stealing from religious institutions. The FBI has been building a case for 18 months. Your evidence provides crucial missing pieces. The scope kept expanding. What started as personal exploitation had revealed a criminal enterprise. My parents weren't just bad people. They were allegedly professional criminals using family as cover for larger operations. Every revelation reframed the past decades. By evening, Jennifer had secured an emergency restraining order preventing my parents from contacting me or accessing any computer systems that could create deep fakes. The FBI scheduled interviews for the following week. Prosecutors were preparing charges ranging from embezzlement to attempted extortion. You did the right thing, Jennifer assured me as we wrapped up. I know it doesn't feel like it with threats flying, but you've potentially saved dozens of victims from continued theft. Your courage matters. Courage felt generous. I was terrified, angry, exhausted. But underneath those emotions, something else grew relief. The secrets were exposed patterns, documented crimes, acknowledged by authorities who took them seriously. The burden of carrying their lies alone had finally lifted. That night, I stayed at a hotel Jennifer recommended, one with good security and no connection to my usual patterns. The stalking photos had made me hyper-aware of vulnerability. If they'd watched me for years, they knew my routines, safe spaces, usual refuges. Everything needed recalculation. From the hotel room, I called Marcus. He sounded stronger, the psychiatric hold providing unexpected sanctuary from family chaos. We talked about grandmother's hidden trust, the power of attorney revelation, the expanding criminal case. For the first time in memory, we sounded like actual siblings bonded by shared survival rather than manipulated competition. "I'm proud of you," he said before hanging up. "I spent years as the golden child while you did the hard work. Now you're the one saving us both. Thank you." Sleep came fitfully interrupted by processing the day's revelations. My parents had handed me legal control while planning to steal my identity. They'd hidden wealth while taking my payments. They'd threatened fabricated revenge porn rather than accept responsibility. Each escalation revealed more about who they'd always been beneath the respectable masks. Tomorrow would bring new battles, but tonight their accounts stayed frozen. Their crimes were documented, their threats recorded as evidence. The power had shifted definitively. They'd called me a burden, but I'd become their consequence. The child who refused to enable any more, who used their own weapons against them. The legal storm had just begun, but for the first time, I wasn't facing it alone. Lawyers, detectives, FBI agents, professionals who understood predatory parents existed and deserved prosecution. The system my parents had hidden behind now turned its attention to them. Justice moved slowly but steadily. Each document filed, every charge, considered all the evidence processed. It built toward accountability they'd never expected from the daughter they designated as their personal ATM and emotional dumping ground. They'd created their perfect victim, then acted shocked when she evolved into their biggest threat. The burden of being their child had transformed into the power to hold them accountable. They'd taught me documentation and evidence through their abuse. Now those lessons would convict them. Saturday night shattered the fragile peace I'd found at the hotel. The restraining order was only 48 hours old when my security camera app sent an alert at 2 a.m. Motion detected at my apartment door. Through bleary eyes, I watched the live stream on my phone showing a figure in a designer coat trying various keys. My mother. Despite court orders, despite pending criminal charges, she stood at my door like she still owned access to my life. The coat probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, funded by stolen church donations. Her face showed determination mixing with something darker. Desperation, maybe, or rage finally unleashed. I called 911 while grabbing clothes, explaining the restraining order violation to the dispatcher. They promised immediate response, but my apartment was 15 minutes away. Too much could happen in 15 minutes with someone this unhinged. The security feed showed her giving up on keys and pulling something from her coat. My blood chilled, recognizing the shape. A handgun held awkwardly but purposefully. She began pounding on the door with her free hand. "Guadalupe, open this door immediately. We need to discuss your recent behavior." Her voice carried through the camera's audio-mixing maternal authority with barely contained fury. The gun waved as she gestured safety clearly off. This woman who'd led church committees was prepared for violence rather than accepting consequences. I grabbed my keys and pepper spray, racing through empty hotel corridors. The night clerk barely looked up as I sprinted past. My car started on the second try, tires squealing from the parking garage. Every red light felt eternal while watching my phone screen showing her increasingly aggressive attempts. "I know you're watching these cameras," she said to the lens. "Very clever, documenting everything like I taught you. But you forgot who trained you, little girl. I've been preparing for this moment longer than you've been alive." She produced papers from her coat, waving them at the camera alongside the gun. Signed confessions stating you helped steal church funds, bank records showing deposits to your accounts, witness statements from people who'll swear you bragged about the thefts, all backdated, all perfectly believable. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. She'd actually done it, prepared an entire frame job while embezzling. The paranoia ran so deep she'd created contingencies against her own daughter before I'd even considered exposing her. "You have 10 minutes to arrive and destroy the real evidence," she continued. "Otherwise, these go to authorities with a story about my heartbreak discovering my daughter's crimes. Who will they believe, the respected treasurer or the bitter child who already showed instability by abandoning family at Thanksgiving?" I pulled into my building's garage as sirens wailed in the distance. Racing upstairs felt faster than waiting for the elevator. At my floor, I could hear her voice echoing down the hallway, still monologuing to my door about disappointment and betrayal. "5 minutes, Guadalupe. Then I start uploading files to police tip lines. Your career reputation, freedom, all gone because you couldn't just stay quiet and grateful." Rounding the corner, I saw her clearly for the first time in weeks. The designer coat hung open, revealing a silk blouse, probably worth my monthly grocery budget. The gun looked almost toy-like in manicured hands, more accustomed to counting stolen money than wielding weapons. But her expression held nothing playful, just cold calculation mixed with narcissistic injury. She spotted me and smiled, a predator recognizing prey. "There's my ungrateful daughter. Come to negotiate finally." "Put the gun down, Mom. Police are already coming." "For you, once they see my evidence. I've thought of everything, prepared for years. Did you think I'd let you destroy what I've built? I've sacrificed too much to let an accident derail my plans." "Accident?" Her laugh was bitter. "You were never planned, never wanted. I was 22 with ambitions beyond motherhood. But abortion wasn't accessible then, and your father convinced me family would look respectable for his career. So I made the best of an unwanted situation, trained you to be useful at least." The words should have hurt, but they just confirmed what I'd always sensed. Her resentment hadn't been subtle, just unspoken until now. Every birthday felt like an obligation, every achievement ignored unless it reflected well on her. "Marcus was different," she continued. "Planned, desired, chosen. He was supposed to be everything Dr. Success, our retirement plan. Instead, he inherited his father's weakness. But you got my survival instinct. Too bad you turned it against me." Sirens grew louder, probably 2 blocks away. She heard them too, gun hand steadying with renewed purpose. "Inside now! We're destroying evidence together, or I'm destroying you. Choose quickly." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Then you're going to prison." She pulled out her phone with her free hand thumb, hovering over send. One click uploads everything. Your boss receives photos showing you stealing from client accounts. Police get the church theft evidence. Everyone learns what you really are. A fiction you created because facing consequences terrifies you more than murdering your daughter. The gun swung toward me, her face contorting. "I'm not murdering anyone. You're going to break into your own apartment. I'll heroically try to stop you." Tragic accident occurs. The grief-stricken mother who discovered her daughter's crimes but tried to protect her anyway. Police burst through the stairwell door before she could continue scripting my death. Officers with weapons drawn shouting commands she seemed not to hear. Her focus stayed locked on me, decades of resentment distilled to this moment. "Drop the weapon now." She turned slightly, as if just noticing armed officers surrounding us. The gun lowered but didn't drop her thumb, still poised over the phone screen. "Officers, thank goodness. My daughter has been stealing from our church. I have evidence." "Ma'am, drop the gun immediately." Reality seemed to penetrate finally. She looked at the weapon like she'd forgotten holding it, then back at me with pure hatred. "This is your fault," she said clearly. "Everything that happens next is because you couldn't just stay grateful." The gun clattered to the floor. Officers moved, instantly securing the weapon while others restrained her. She didn't resist physically but kept talking, spinning her narrative about discovering my theft, trying to confront me, fearing for her life. "Check her phone," I told the lead officer. She was threatening to upload fabricated evidence against me. There's a restraining order, she shouldn't be here. They documented everything methodically. The gun, the phone with prepared false evidence, her recorded threats on my security system. Each piece added to her self-created prosecution. She'd brought proof of her own frame attempt evidence of extortion, a weapon to a restraining order violation. As they led her away in handcuffs, she turned back once. "Your father knows everything, has copies of everything. This isn't over." The threat felt hollow now. She'd revealed the worst, the fabricated evidence, the frame job, the willingness to kill. Whatever my father attempted would pale compared to staring down my mother's gun while she scripted my murder. Detectives arrived to process the scene, taking my statement while reviewing security footage. The evidence was overwhelming, they assured me. Attempted murder, extortion, violation of restraining order weapons charges. She'd added years to potential sentences in one desperate night. "The fabricated evidence actually helps your case," Detective Morrison explained. "Shows consciousness of guilt, preparation for false accusations. No innocent person prepares frame jobs against their children." I spent hours at the station providing statements, reviewing evidence, building the case that would hopefully prevent her from ever terrorizing anyone again. Jennifer arrived at dawn, having received my panicked texts. She'd already begun emergency motions to revoke any bail possibility given the violent escalation. "She showed her true self," Jennifer said after reviewing everything. "No more pretending this was misguided parenting or financial stress. She came to kill you rather than face accountability. That's who she's always been beneath the church lady facade." By sunrise, exhaustion weighed heavier than fear. I'd survived my mother's worst, her hatred, her gun, her willingness to destroy me for exposing her crimes. The burden she'd assigned me at birth had nearly become a coffin, but I'd refused to lie down in it. Marcus called from the hospital as I finally returned to the hotel. He'd heard about the arrest through family networks already spinning the story. Our mother, the attempted murderer, was being reframed as a distraught woman, driven to extremes by ungrateful children. "They're saying she was defending herself," he reported. "That you attacked her first, that the gun was yours. The relatives are choosing sides based on who tells the story best. Security footage shows everything. Let them lie, evidence speaks louder." "I'm proud of you," he repeated from days earlier. "You faced her down. I hid in pills and lies, but you stood there and refused to break. That's real strength." We talked until exhaustion forced sleep. The adrenaline finally faded, leaving tremors and tears I'd suppressed during the confrontation. My mother had pointed a gun at me, had planned my murder as calmly as she'd planned embezzlement. The woman who'd birthed me was ready to bury me for threatening her criminal comfort. But I'd survived. More than that, I'd gathered evidence that would ensure she never hurt anyone again. The burden of being her unwanted daughter had transformed into the power to stop her. She'd created her own destroyer through years of abuse, then acted shocked when I fulfilled that destiny. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, prosecutors, extended family drama. But tonight I was alive despite her worst efforts. The confrontation she'd forced had revealed the truth beneath decades of manipulation. She wasn't a mother, she was a predator who'd birthed prey, then raged when her intended victim evolved beyond her control. Monday morning's police station visit should have been routine reviewing additional evidence signing statements about Saturday's confrontation. Instead, I found Detective Morrison waiting with an expression that made my stomach drop. She led me to an interview room where another detective sat with thick folders. "Your mother made bail," Morrison said without preamble. Her lawyer argued the gun wasn't loaded. The threats were emotional outbursts, standard minimization tactics. Judge set bail at $500,000. She posted within hours. "How their accounts are frozen. That's what we need to discuss. Your father arrived at the arraignment with cash. Full amount, no bondsman needed. We're trying to trace the source, but cash is harder to track. Cash. $500,000 in untraceable bills appearing overnight while their known accounts stayed frozen. The criminal network ran deeper than anyone had realized. My parents weren't just participants, they were major players with resources beyond embezzled church funds. There's more, the second detective, Rodriguez, interjected. Your father was very vocal at the courthouse making accusations about you. He's claiming you've been unstable for years, that your mother went to check on you out of concern. He's painting Saturday night as a welfare check gone wrong. Despite the restraining order, she violated the gun she brought, the threats recorded on camera. He has explanations for everything. Says the restraining order was obtained through lies. The gun was for protection. Because you'd threatened them, the recorded threats were taken out of context. He's quite convincing to those who want to believe. Morrison slid photographs across the table. My father at the courthouse, but not alone. A young woman stood beside him holding 2 children's hands, boys who looked about 7 and 5 wearing private school uniforms. The woman appeared heavily pregnant, exhausted, clearly overwhelmed. Recognize them. I shook my head, but something nagged at memory's edges. The woman looked vaguely familiar, like someone glimpsed in passing but never properly met. That's Stephanie Chen, Rodriguez explained. Your father's legal wife, according to documents we've discovered. They married 8 years ago in Nevada. The boys are Sean and Samuel. She's pregnant with their 3rd child. The room tilted. Legal wife. My parents' marriage suddenly made sense. The separate bedrooms, the lack of affection, the business-like arrangement. Because it wasn't a marriage. It was a cover for my father's actual life with another family. He's been living double lives for nearly a decade, Morrison continued. Stephanie believes he travels for work, stays with elderly parents when away. She has no idea your mother exists, thinks she's his only wife. The boys call him, Daddy think their grandparents are dead. That's bigamy. It's illegal. Extremely. But here's where it gets complicated. Stephanie brought the cash for bail. Apparently your father convinced her that your mother is his unstable sister who needs help. She liquidated retirement savings to protect family. The betrayal multiplied exponentially. Not only had my father maintained a secret family, he'd manipulated an innocent woman into funding my mother's release. The pregnant wife stood by him at court, unknowingly enabling the woman who'd tried to murder me. We need to interview Stephanie, Rodriguez said. But your father's been coaching her, filling her head with stories about family mental illness, false accusations, jealous relatives trying to destroy their happiness. She's defensive, protective of him. What about the boys? They're victims too. That's our concern. Your father's exposed them to significant trauma when this unravels. They believe their life is normal, Daddy works a lot but loves them. Finding out about his crimes, his other family, it'll shatter their world. I stared at the photographs, seeing my father's hand on the older boy's shoulder, the same hand that had grabbed my arm at Marcus's apartment. These children were my half-brothers, hidden relatives I'd never known existed. Innocent kids caught in their father's web of deception. There's one more thing, Morrison said, producing another file. We tracked some of the cash. It came from accounts connected to the larger embezzlement network. Your father's been managing money for the entire operation, moving funds through shell companies. He's not just a participant, he's essentially their CFO. The scope kept expanding. While I'd been paying their mortgage thinking they struggled, my father had been managing millions in stolen church funds. The factory job was cover the working-class persona carefully crafted. He was a white-collar criminal masquerading as blue-collar respectability. We need your help, Rodriguez said. The power of attorney you have extends to all their assets. We need you to authorize forensic accounting access. Let us trace the full network. Your cooperation could break open cases across 3 states. I signed authorizations, mechanically mind racing through implications. Every family dinner had been a criminal conference. Every complaint about money had been manipulation from millionaire thieves. Every sacrifice extracted from me had funded their enterprise while maintaining appearances. Jennifer arrived as I finished paperwork, her expression grim. Your mother's out and already causing problems. She's contacted your employer claiming you're mentally unstable, that she's concerned about client funds. She's also reaching out to relatives with her version of Saturday night. Let me guess, I attacked her unprovoked. Worse, she's claiming you've been embezzling from your company, that she discovered it and confronted you. Says you pulled the gun on her when she threatened to report it. She's literally projecting her crimes onto you. The audacity shouldn't have surprised me anymore. My mother had tried to murder me, made bail through bigamy-funded cash, and immediately resumed attacking. Prison hadn't humbled her. It had enraged her further. Your employer's not buying it, Jennifer assured me. I've already sent them security footage from Saturday, but she's going to keep escalating until she's back in custody. We need to be prepared. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against better judgment, I looked. Your mother's version is spreading. Come home and fix this before the boys get hurt. You don't want collateral damage. It was from my father. He was threatening his own secret children, using innocent boys as leverage. The man who'd helped create me was willing to traumatize kids under 8 to protect his criminal enterprise. There was no bottom to their depravity. Jennifer took the phone, documenting the threat. This is witness intimidation. He's adding charges faster than we can file them. We spent the afternoon strategizing protection for me, for Marcus, potentially for Stephanie and her children, once she learned the truth. The criminal enterprise was collapsing, but my parents seemed determined to drag everyone down with them. By evening, more truth emerged. Detective Morrison called with updates from the financial investigation. The network was larger than imagined. 23 churches across 5 states, all losing money to the same group. My parents weren't just members, but founding architects. Your mother created the blueprint 12 years ago, Morrison explained. Recruited treasurers taught them. Her methods took percentages of their thefts. Your father managed the money laundering, keeping everything clean enough to avoid federal attention. Until now. 12 years. They'd been master criminals since I was 16, building an empire while I'd believed we were middle class. Every story about financial hardship had been performance art designed to extract resources and maintain cover. The investigation revealed offshore accounts, real estate holdings, investment portfolios, wealth beyond comprehension, hidden while they cried poverty. The house I'd been paying mortgage on. They owned it outright, had for years. The mortgage payments went directly to their criminal enterprise. Conservative estimate puts their network's theft at $18 million, Morrison said. Your parents personally controlled about $6 million of that. They're not small-time thieves who got lucky. They're sophisticated criminals who happen to have children. I hung up feeling numb. $6 million. While I'd skipped meals to afford their fake mortgage, they'd been millionaires playing poverty. While Marcus destroyed himself trying to meet their expectations, they'd had resources to help, but chose control instead. That night, I stayed with Jennifer's family at her insistence. Her husband and teenage daughters welcomed me warmly, providing glimpses of what healthy families looked like. No one drugged anyone's food. No one threatened murder for independence. No one maintained secret families or million-dollar criminal enterprises. You're safe here, Jennifer's daughter Emma said, offering me cookies she'd baked. Mom told us someone hurt you, but you're brave for standing up to them. Brave felt generous. I was terrified, exhausted, overwhelmed by daily revelations of deeper betrayal. But I was also determined. My parents had created this situation through greed and cruelty. Now they'd face consequences from the daughter they'd tried to destroy. Marcus called before bed, sounding stronger. The psychiatric team was transitioning him to outpatient care, confident in his stability. He'd been following the investigation's revelations with grim satisfaction. $6 million, he said quietly. They had $6 million while making us beg for scraps, while drugging me to keep me compliant, while stealing your payments and calling you a burden. Now they're losing everything. Mom's on bail but facing decades in prison. Dad's bigamy and financial crimes mean he'll die behind bars. Their money's frozen, networks collapsing, reputations destroyed. Good, he said firmly. They earned every consequence. We survived them, Lupe. That's what matters. We had survived against odds that seemed impossible now, knowing the full scope. Professional criminals had raised us, viewing us as tools rather than children. They'd nearly succeeded in destroying us, Marcus, through drugs, and pressure me through exploitation and attempted murder. But we'd endured. More than that, we'd exposed them. The burden they'd assigned became the strength to stop them. Every document they'd taught me to keep became evidence. Every lie they'd told became proof of consciousness of guilt. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more charges, more desperate moves from parents who'd proven capable of anything. But tonight, in a stranger's guest room, surrounded by normal family sounds, I felt something I'd never experienced at home. Safety, not just physical, but emotional. The knowledge that some families operated on love rather than manipulation, that parents could support children without price tags, that homes could be refuges instead of crime scenes. My parents had failed at their most basic job, protecting their children. Instead, they'd been our greatest threat. But their failure had forged survivors strong enough to stop them. We'd been born into their crime family, but chose justice instead. The burden was theirs now, the weight of consequences they'd earned through decades of calculated evil. I'd carry scars from their abuse forever, but I'd no longer carry their secrets, their crimes, their expectations. That weight belonged in courtrooms and prison cells, not on their children's shoulders. Tuesday afternoon brought unexpected hope in the form of Marcus's voice, stronger than I'd heard it in years. He called while I was reviewing legal documents at Jennifer's office, his words tumbling out with barely contained excitement. Lupe, you need to know something. I haven't been completely honest about the recordings. My pen stilled against the paper. What recordings? Remember how I told you about getting paranoid from the drugging well? That paranoia made me do something that's going to change everything. I've been recording our parents for 2 years. Everything. Every conversation. Every family dinner. Every private discussion I could capture. The revelation hit like electricity. 2 years of audio evidence gathered by the son they'd drugged into compliance. The irony was perfect. Their chemical control had created the very paranoia that documented their crimes. Where are these recordings? Cloud storage, multiple backups, everything encrypted. Hundreds of hours. Lupe, though, I have them discussing the embezzlement planning to frame you, laughing about the mortgage payments. I have Dad talking about his other family. I have Mom explaining how she doses my food. Everything. My hands trembled as I put the phone on speaker for Jennifer to hear. She immediately began taking notes, her expression shifting from professional interest to sharp focus. Marcus, this is Jennifer Walsh, your sister's attorney. These recordings were they made in Texas. Yes, all of them. At their house, in their cars, at restaurants. I bought tiny devices online, hid them everywhere. Voice-activated, motion-triggered. They never knew. Texas is a one-party consent state, Jennifer said, excitement creeping into her usually measured tone. Your recordings are completely legal and admissible. Can you share access with us immediately? Within minutes, Marcus had sent encrypted links. Jennifer's paralegal began downloading files while we listened to samples. The quality was crystal clear. My parents' voices unmistakable as they discussed their crimes with casual confidence. The first recording was from last Thanksgiving preparation. My mother's voice filled the office. Make sure Guadalupe sits where we planned. I want maximum impact when I deliver the burden line. We've rehearsed this enough. She needs to storm out for the narrative to work. My father responded, still think we should wait. The mortgage is due next week. No, she's getting too independent. Did you see her at lunch last month? Actually looked happy. We can't have that. Break her down now, build her back grateful. The payments will resume once she feels guilty enough. They'd rehearsed my humiliation, scripted the words that would wound me most. The spontaneous cruelty had been carefully choreographed manipulation designed to maintain financial control. Jennifer played another file, this one from their bedroom. "The church audit is next month," my mother said. "I'll need an extra $40,000 from Guadalupe's payments to cover the playground fund. Tell her we're behind on property taxes," my father suggested. "She never verifies, just sends money. Maybe claim I need medical procedures." Brilliant. A heart scare would really motivate her. "We'll plant seeds at Christmas about chest pains." Each recording revealed new depths of calculation. They'd planned fake medical emergencies, orchestrated family crises, designed elaborate performances to extract maximum resources. My entire adult life had been their carefully directed tragedy. Marcus had captured everything with obsessive thoroughness. Recordings from their cars showed them driving to casinos, discussing which churches to target next. Kitchen conversations detailed the drugging regimen, my mother explaining which medications worked best for keeping Marcus manageable. "The Xanax makes him too sleepy," she said in one recording, "but mix it with Klonopin and he's perfectly compliant. Confused enough to need us, but functional enough to maintain appearances." "You're drugging our son," my father said, though his tone suggested observation rather than objection. "I'm managing his potential. Would you prefer he actually try medical school again? Fail publicly? This way he's our permanent dependent. Someone needs to care for us when we're old." The casualness of discussing chemical imprisonment shocked even Jennifer. "This is evidence of ongoing assault conspiracy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Your mother just confessed to multiple felonies." More recordings played. Financial discussions revealed the network structure, which church treasurers reported to them how money moved between states, where offshore accounts hid millions. My father, the supposed factory worker, displayed sophisticated understanding of international banking. Then came the recording that changed everything. Date stamps showed 3 weeks ago after Patricia's investigation began. My parents sat in their study, voices tense. "Someone's asking questions," my mother said. "That investigator tracked casino visits. We need contingencies." "Already handled. I've prepared documents showing Guadalupe as the embezzler. Bank records, forged signatures, even video footage." Video footage. Deep fakes. Technology's amazing now. I have clips of her discussing stealing church funds, entering banks with deposit bags. Cost $30,000, but worth it if we need them. What about Marcus? Different approach. If he becomes a problem, we increase the dosing, make him seem unstable. Who believes a paranoid addict over respectable parents? They'd plan to destroy both their children rather than face consequences. Frame me for their crimes, drive Marcus to complete breakdown. The conversation continued with details about hiding assets, moving money to Stephanie's accounts, without her knowledge, preparing to flee if necessary. "Mexico's the backup," my father said. "I've already got property there under false names. We can run the operation remotely." What about the children? "Guadalupe's a lost cause, too independent now. Marcus comes with us, he'll need constant management. Stephanie thinks I travel for business anyway. She'll believe extended trips." Jennifer paused the recording. "They plan to kidnap Marcus while fleeing the country. This goes beyond financial crimes to conspiracy for international kidnapping." The recordings kept revealing horrors. One captured them laughing about my college fund theft, reminiscing how they'd convinced teenage me that poverty was real while spending my designated money on vacation property. Another documented their stalking network. "Thompson's getting good photos," my mother said. "Guadalupe never notices him. $20 per picture is reasonable for quality surveillance. What's the point? We know where she works and lives." Insurance. If she ever rebels, we need leverage. Photos can be edited, contexts changed. Amazing what technology allows now. They'd built a surveillance apparatus around me, treating their daughter like a foreign asset requiring constant monitoring. The violation felt total. Every moment of perceived privacy had been observed, documented, filed for potential use. Marcus's paranoia had captured it all. Discussions about bribing church board members, threatening Pastor Williams, recruiting new treasurers for their network. Hours of evidence prosecutors usually dream about but rarely receive. "The investigation needs these immediately," Jennifer said. "This transforms a strong case into an overwhelming one. No jury will acquit after hearing parents plan their children's destruction so coldly." Marcus gave full permission to share everything. "I want them stopped, not just for us, but for all their victims. Every church member who trusted them, every family they've robbed. Play every recording in court. Let everyone hear who they really are." We spent hours categorizing files, creating indexes for prosecutors. The volume was staggering. Marcus had essentially wiretapped their entire lives, capturing criminal admissions they'd never imagined being preserved. One recording stood out for its personal cruelty. My mother speaking to someone on phone, "Yes, Guadalupe's still single. Probably always will be. Who'd want someone so serious about money? She counts every penny because she's cheap, not generous like people think. Marcus will give us grandchildren eventually. Guadalupe's just practice for real parenting." Even to strangers, she'd diminished me. The woman who stole my money called me cheap. Who'd prevented relationships through stalking wondered why I stayed single. Who designated me as practice couldn't understand why I'd walked away. "I need a break," I told Jennifer after particularly brutal recordings of them planning my professional destruction. "This is too much." "Take all the time you need, but understand Marcus gave you an incredible gift. These recordings will put them away for decades. Your brother saved you while saving himself." Outside Jennifer's office, I called Marcus. "Why didn't you tell me sooner about the recordings?" "I was ashamed. Thought it made me crazy paranoid. Hidden recorders everywhere like some conspiracy theorist. But the drugging made me question reality, so I needed proof of what was real. Turns out reality was worse than paranoia imagined." "You're not crazy. You're brilliant. Those recordings will save so many people from their theft. Maybe it makes up for the years I stayed silent, for benefiting from their favoritism while you suffered. I should have protected you, Lupe. Big brothers are supposed to do that. You were drugged and manipulated. Now you're protecting everyone by providing evidence. That matters more than the past." We talked about recovery, about futures free from chemical control and financial manipulation. The recordings had transformed him from victim to key witness. His paranoia had been justified. He was living with criminals who discussed his destruction over breakfast. That evening, prosecutors listened to samples with growing excitement. The conspiracy case expanded with each file. Financial crimes became racketeering charges. State-level theft elevated to federal cases. The network of church embezzlers faced exposure through one paranoid son's hidden microphones. "Your parents are finished," the lead prosecutor assured me. "These recordings provide direct admission of guilt for dozens of charges. We'll be arresting additional conspirators within days. The entire network will collapse." News traveled fast through family connections. My phone exploded with calls from relatives demanding explanations. How could I destroy the family? Why would Marcus betray his parents? Didn't we understand loyalty? I didn't answer. Let them listen to the recordings eventually released in court. Let them hear their respected relatives planning to frame children for crimes. Let them understand loyalty meant nothing to people who viewed even family as disposable assets. Marcus's gift of evidence had shifted everything. No longer could our parents claim misunderstanding or exaggeration. Their own words condemned them, repeatedly captured by the son they'd drugged into compliance, who'd turned paranoia into protection. The recordings played in my mind that night. Every casual cruelty, every calculated manipulation, every laugh at our expense while planning further exploitation. But underneath horror lived gratitude for Marcus's foresight, for technology that captured truth, for evidence that would ensure justice. Tomorrow the arrests would expand. The network would crumble. Churches would recover stolen funds. Victims would see justice. All because a drugged son's paranoia had led him to document everything, creating an archive of abuse no one could deny. The burden of proof no longer rested on our testimony alone. Their own words would convict them, played for judges and juries who'd hear the truth they'd spoken when they thought no one was listening. Marcus had given us the ultimate gift, their complete confession delivered unknowingly to hidden microphones that transformed paranoia into justice. Thursday morning's news cycle exploded with the story nobody could ignore. Local church treasurers arrested in multi-state embezzlement ring dominated headlines, but the real storm erupted on social media. Someone had leaked portions of Marcus's recordings, and suddenly everyone heard my mother laughing about stealing Christmas charity funds. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Jennifer had warned this might happen. High-profile cases attracted media attention, and recordings of respected community members planning crimes made irresistible content. But I hadn't anticipated the visceral community response. Guadalupe. The voice on my voicemail belonged to Maria Santos, whose family attended my mother's church. My kids won't have Christmas because of your mother. The charity fund was supposed to help us after my husband's accident. How could she steal from children? Please call me back. Message after message contained similar anguish. Elderly members whose memorial funds vanished. Youth groups whose mission trips collapsed mysteriously. Food bank coordinators who'd struggled to explain empty shelves despite generous donations. Real faces attached to my mother's theft statistics. By noon, crowds had gathered outside my parents' house. Jennifer drove me past to assess the situation, though we didn't stop. Dozens of people held signs. Return our donations. Stealing from God's house. Our kids deserved Christmas. Local news crews interviewed crying families. That's Mrs. Chen. I recognized an elderly woman speaking to reporters. She saved for 2 years to donate toward new church wheelchairs for disabled members. Mom told her they'd ordered equipment that never arrived. The crowd wasn't violent, just heartbroken. These people had trusted my mother with more than money. They'd given her their faith in community goodness. She'd stolen both their funds and their ability to trust religious institutions. My phone rang with another unknown number. This time I answered, hearing a young woman's trembling voice. Is this Guadalupe Rodriguez? I'm Ashley Williams, Pastor Williams' daughter. I wanted to thank you for exposing this. My dad's not perfect, I know about his mistakes, but your mother destroyed him for years. Watching him carry that weight nearly killed our family. We talked briefly about complicated parents and difficult truths. Ashley revealed her mother had forgiven the affair, choosing to rebuild rather than abandon decades of marriage. The church board had voted to retain Pastor Williams after his confession, viewing his courage in exposing embezzlement as redemption for personal failures. The congregation's more angry about the theft than his affair, Ashley explained. Shows where priorities land when children go without Christmas presents. Jennifer's phone interrupted with urgent news. The FBI had expanded arrests, picking up 12 more network members across 4 states. The recordings proved invaluable for establishing conspiracy connections. Each treasurer thought they'd operated independently until Marcus's audio revealed coordinated planning. Your mother was definitely the ringleader, Jennifer reported after speaking with prosecutors. She recruited, trained, and managed the entire operation. The others are turning state's evidence, hoping for reduced sentences. Everyone's pointing fingers at her. We drove to the church where crowds had also gathered. Not protesting, but organizing. Tables appeared on the lawn with volunteers collecting donations for families affected by the theft. Community members who could afford it were contributing to replace stolen charity funds. We won't let those babies go without Christmas, one organizer announced through a bullhorn. If someone stole from our community will step up. That's what real faith looks like. I parked and approached quietly, not wanting recognition. But Maria Santos spotted me, immediately rushing over with tears streaming. Guadalupe, you saved us. If you hadn't exposed this, she'd still be stealing. My children will have Christmas because you were brave enough to speak truth. Others gathered sharing stories of suspicious financial situations they'd ignored out of trust. The youth pastor revealed mission trips canceled for lack of funds, while my mother drove new cars. The food bank coordinator admitted noticing discrepancies, but assuming accounting errors rather than theft. She sat in finance committee meetings talking about fiscal responsibility. One board member said bitterly, lectured us about waste while stealing thousands, even prayed over the money before counting it. An impromptu support group formed on the church steps, victims sharing experiences, comparing notes, realizing the theft's scope. Elderly members cried, discovering their memorial gifts meant for church improvements had funded casino trips. Parents raged, learning their children's camp fees went to my mother's shopping sprees. 20 years I've attended this church, Mr. Thompson said, voice shaking. Trusted her with every donation. My wife's funeral fund, our anniversary gift to the church, all of it stolen. How do we trust anyone now? The question hung heavy. My mother hadn't just stolen money, she'd destroyed faith in institutions meant to provide spiritual comfort. Every future church treasurer would face suspicion. Every donation would carry doubt. The ripple effects would last generations. Local businesses began contributing to replacement funds. Restaurant owners, shopkeepers, service providers, people who'd never attended the church but understood community meant supporting victims. Within hours, donation tables overflowed with cash and checks. This is what she never understood, Pastor Williams said, appearing beside me. Community isn't about taking, it's about giving when others need help. Your mother saw weakness to exploit, but look strength everywhere, people helping strangers because it's right. He looked older, but somehow lighter confession, having lifted years of burden. The congregation's forgiveness for his personal failings while condemning financial crimes showed mature understanding of human frailty versus calculated evil. Marcus arrived as afternoon shadows lengthened, released from psychiatric hold, but still fragile. The crowd's energy shifted when they recognized him, unsure how to treat the golden child who'd helped expose his parents. "I'm sorry," he said simply to the gathered crowd. "I knew something was wrong but stayed silent too long. Your trust deserved better protection. I hope the recordings help recover what was stolen." Maria Santos stepped forward first, embracing him. "You were drugged and manipulated. Now you're helping fix it. That's what matters." Others followed, offering forgiveness for complicity he'd never chosen. The community that might have turned angry instead showed compassion for another victim of our parents' crimes. Marcus wept openly, perhaps feeling genuine acceptance for the first time. "Guadalupe paid our mortgage while Mom stole from you," he announced suddenly. "She sacrificed everything thinking our parents struggled, never knowing they were millionaire thieves. If anyone deserves your anger, it's me for staying silent, not her for exposing truth." The crowd's energy shifted again, focusing on me with new understanding. Whispers spread the daughter who'd paid bills while being robbed, who'd exposed crimes despite death threats. Someone started clapping. Others joined. Soon the church lawn echoed with applause that felt like absolution for years of misplaced guilt. "Your parents isolated you both," someone called out. "Made you think family loyalty meant enabling crime. But look around, this is your real family, people who choose honesty over comfort." As evening approached, the donation tables tallied impressive sums, not enough to replace everything stolen, but sufficient for Christmas charity distribution. The community had rallied within hours, proving resilience our mother had underestimated. She thought we were weak marks. Pastor Williams addressed the crowd. "Easy targets for manipulation, but we're stronger together than any thief imagines. Tonight, children will know Christmas comes despite criminals. That's our victory." The FBI arrived to interview willing witnesses. Lines formed with people eager to provide evidence, share suspicious memories, contribute to justice. My mother had created her own army of prosecution witnesses through years of theft. Local restaurants donated food for volunteers who stayed past dinner. The church lawn transformed into an impromptu festival not celebrating, but processing communally. Musicians played children, ran between adults, comparing notes. Teenagers set up social media campaigns for additional donations. "This should have been devastating," Jennifer observed, watching the scene. "Your mother stole hundreds of thousands from these people. Instead, they're building something stronger from the ruins." "Because they're processing truth instead of living lies," I replied. "She forced everyone to pretend respectability while robbing them. Now they can be honest about the pain and work together healing it." Marcus and I stayed until midnight helping coordinate donation distribution lists. Families who'd lost charity funds would receive first priority. The elderly who donated memorial funds would see those honored through community contributions. Youth programs would restart with transparent financial oversight. "Your mother would hate this," Marcus said as we finally left. "All these people cooperating, supporting each other, refusing to let theft define them. She counted on isolated victims, not unified response." He was right. Our mother had built her empire on assumptions about human weakness, that people would stay quiet from embarrassment, that communities would fracture under scandal. Instead, her crimes had catalyzed connection. The burden she'd placed on everyone had become shared weight lighter when carried together. Driving home, I thought about Christmas approaching in 3 weeks. Children who'd faced empty holidays would receive presents bought with community donations. Families struggling financially would find support from neighbors who understood betrayal's pain. The charity our mother stole had returned, multiplied through human kindness. Her theft had revealed the community's true wealth, not in bank accounts she could embezzle, but in connections she couldn't steal. Every person who'd contributed today, who'd offered forgiveness to Marcus, who'd chosen rebuilding over revenge, proved that some things remained beyond her reach. The burden of her crimes would send her to prison, but the blessing of community response would heal wounds she'd inflicted. Today hadn't been about punishment, but about people choosing to transform victimization into victory through simple acts of caring for neighbors in need. Tomorrow the legal consequences would continue. Trials would start. Sentences would be pronounced. Justice would proceed mechanically. But tonight a community had risen from the ashes of betrayal to prove that faith might be shaken, but humanity endured. That was the real triumph, not just exposing crimes, but inspiring compassion that no thief could steal. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp December air that made everything feel sharper, more real. I sat in the federal prosecutor's office, surrounded by evidence boxes and legal teams, preparing for the biggest organized crime takedown in state history. What had started as family dysfunction had exploded into a landmark racketeering case. "Your parents were just arrested again," lead prosecutor James Morrison announced, entering with fresh files. "This time on federal charges: RICO violations, interstate fraud, money laundering conspiracy. The recordings your brother provided gave us everything needed for federal jurisdiction." The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act legislation, designed for mob bosses, now applied to my church treasurer mother and factory worker father. The irony felt appropriate given their criminal enterprise's scope. How many others, I asked? 47 arrests across 6 states since Friday. Your mother trained them, all created the blueprint they followed. She's facing 120 years if convicted on all counts. Your father's looking at 90 for the financial management side. Jennifer reviewed the indictments, her expression professionally neutral despite the staggering numbers. They'll die in prison. Even with plea deals, neither will see freedom again. There's more, Morrison continued. The investigation uncovered something unexpected. Your parents weren't working independently, they answered to someone higher. This network connects to 3 similar operations nationally. We're talking about systematic targeting of religious institutions worth roughly $200 million in theft. $200 million. My parents were middle management in a criminal organization that made mafia families look amateur. Churches across America had been infiltrated, robbed by people trained in my mother's methods, but answering to shadowy figures still being identified. Your mother was regional director for the Southwest, Morrison explained, showing organizational charts that looked like corporate structures. She recruited, trained, and managed 17 active embezzlers. Your father handled their money, laundering, taking percentages, while cleaning cash through legitimate businesses. Including Stephanie's accounts? Morrison nodded grimly. She's been cleared of wrongdoing, completely unaware her accounts were used for criminal enterprise. We've frozen assets to preserve them for restitution, but she'll receive legitimate funds back. The prenatal care and children's expenses will be covered. Strange to feel relief for my father's secret family, but those children bore no responsibility for his crimes. Stephanie was as much a victim as anyone manipulated by a man who'd lived multiple lies simultaneously. At least she'd have resources to rebuild after the deception shattered. The recordings are key evidence, Morrison continued, but we need your testimony about the mortgage payments, the manipulation, the attempted murder. Are you prepared for trial? Yes. No hesitation. The truth needed speaking in court under oath with my parents watching. Every payment I'd made, every sacrifice extracted, every manipulation endured would become part of official record. Good, because this case is making history. The DOJ wants to use it as an example showing religious institutions how to identify embezzlement, training treasurers, in oversight preventing future theft. Your family's crime might actually protect churches nationally. Marcus arrived for his portion of testimony preparation. He looked healthier each time I saw him, sobriety and truth providing clarity the drugs had stolen. His recordings would play for juries, but his personal testimony about being drugged would humanize the cold financial crimes. I want to testify, he said firmly. Not just provide recordings, but sit in that chair and explain how they destroyed their own son for control. Maybe other parents will recognize themselves and stop before reaching these extremes. We spent days in preparation reviewing evidence and practicing testimony. The scope kept expanding as more conspirators flipped, providing information about the network's structure. My mother emerged as a criminal mastermind who'd recognized church vulnerabilities and monetized them nationally. She actually wrote training manuals. Morrison showed us documents seized from encrypted drives, step-by-step instructions for embezzlement, psychological profiles of ideal victims' methods for avoiding detection. She turned theft into standardized business practice. The manuals were chilling in their thoroughness. My mother had identified 17 different ways to steal from churches, complete with spreadsheet templates and suggested cover stories. She'd professionalized crime while maintaining her Sunday school teacher facade. Wednesday brought unexpected visitors. 3 women arrived at Jennifer's office asking to speak with me privately. They introduced themselves as fellow regional directors in the criminal network, all arrested but cooperating with authorities. We wanted to apologize, Linda Chen said, looking haunted. Your mother recruited us, trained us, convinced us the churches were wasteful and deserved robbing. We believed her lies about redistributing wealth to needy families. She was persuasive, another added. Made us feel like Robin Hood instead of common thieves. Only after arrest did we realize every justification was manipulation. The money went to gambling and luxury, not charity. They revealed details about my mother's recruitment tactics. She'd identified women with financial struggles, offered solutions through crime, then trapped them with blackmail once they'd stolen. The network operated like a multi-level marketing scheme, except the product was embezzlement. She talked about you both, the third woman said quietly, bragged about controlling her children completely, said you were funding operations without knowing it, that Marcus was too drugged to resist. She saw you as successes, proof her methods worked even on family. The words stung despite everything. My mother had advertised our exploitation, used our suffering as selling points for recruiting criminals. We weren't just victims, but marketing materials for expanding her enterprise. She's evil, Linda said bluntly. "I've accepted responsibility for my crimes, but your mother transcends normal criminal behavior. She enjoyed destroying lives, took pleasure in manipulation. Prison might be the first consequence she's ever faced." They left after providing additional evidence, 3 women whose lives my mother had corrupted, now helping build cases against her. The network was cannibalizing itself, each member racing to provide information for lighter sentences. Thursday's news broke the story nationally. Church embezzlement ring, leaders arrested in federal sweep, made headlines from New York to Los Angeles. My parents' photos appeared on every major network, their respectable facades contrasted with arrest footage. The community response intensified. Churches nationwide began reviewing financial procedures, implementing oversight my mother's crimes made necessary. Seminaries added fraud prevention to curricula. Religious organizations that had operated on trust now understood predators existed within their walls. Your mother accidentally reformed church financial management nationally, Jennifer observed, watching news coverage. Her crimes were so extensive they forced systematic change. That's an unexpected legacy. Friday brought the most satisfying development. Morrison called with news that made me actually smile, a rarity these days. The grand jury returned indictments on everything, all 47 conspirators, including your parents. But here's the beautiful part: we're invoking asset forfeiture. Every penny they stole, every property purchased with stolen funds, every hidden account becomes government property for victim restitution, including the Florida vacation home. Everything. The house you paid mortgage on, the vacation properties, the cars, the jewelry, the offshore accounts. Current estimate is $14 million in recoverable assets from your parents alone. The entire network might return $60 million to victimized churches. Justice felt tangible suddenly. Not just prison sentences, but actual return of stolen funds. Churches would rebuild. Charity programs would restart. Victims would see restitution from the criminals who'd robbed them. There's a RICO provision you should know about, Morrison added. Children of convicted racketeers can apply for victim compensation. Given the documented abuse, drugging, and financial exploitation, you and Marcus qualify for substantial restitution from seized assets. We don't want their money. Not theirs anymore. It's victim compensation funded by asset forfeiture. Your victims as much as any church member. The money would come from the same pool being distributed to all victims. I agreed to consider it, though taking anything connected to them felt wrong. But Marcus needed resources for continued therapy, medical bills from his overdose rebuilding life after years of chemical control. Maybe accepting restitution was just returning what they'd stolen. College funds, mortgage payments, lost opportunities. That weekend, I attended the church for the first time since childhood. Not for services, but for the community meeting about moving forward. The sanctuary filled with people processing collective trauma while planning recovery. The federal government will return approximately $4 million to our congregation, Pastor Williams announced to gasps and applause. Every penny stolen will be restored with interest. Programs will restart. Charities will resume. We'll emerge stronger than before. He called me to the podium unexpectedly. 300 faces turned toward me, some I'd known since childhood, others strangers united by shared victimization. The weight of their attention felt overwhelming. I don't have profound words, I admitted. Just gratitude that truth prevailed. My parents stole more than money, they stole trust and faith. But watching this community rally proved they couldn't steal what matters most: human connection, compassion, resilience. Those things remained beyond their reach. The applause felt like healing, not just for me, but for everyone who'd wondered if speaking up was worth the cost. Sometimes exposing family crimes meant losing everything, but sometimes it meant finding new family among fellow survivors who understood that survival itself was victory. Marcus joined me at the podium, our first public appearance together since everything exploded. Our parents taught us documentation and evidence through their abuse, he said. We use those lessons against them. If anyone here is suffering in silence, know that sometimes the skills abuse teaches become the tools for escape. More applause, some tears, many nods of recognition. How many people sat in those pews hiding family dysfunction? How many wondered if exposure was worth destruction? Our presence proved survival was possible, that justice sometimes prevailed, that burden could transform into purpose. As we left together, Marcus grabbed my hand. First physical affection between us in years. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually stopped them." "Together," I corrected. Neither of us could have done this alone. The federal case would proceed for months. Trials, testimony, evidence presentation, verdicts, sentencing. But the important part was already over. The network was destroyed. Churches were protected. Victims would receive restitution. 2 adult children had found strength to stop criminal parents who'd seemed unstoppable. The burden had lifted, replaced by something unexpected: pride. Not in destruction or revenge, but in choosing truth over comfortable lies, in protecting future victims from our parents' predation, in discovering that family could be chosen rather than endured. Tomorrow would bring more legal procedures. But tonight, Marcus and I sat in my apartment eating takeout and talking like siblings instead of competitors for parental approval that was never genuine. We'd lost parents, but found each other. Lost inheritance, but gained integrity. Lost burden, but discovered purpose. The crimes that nearly destroyed us had instead forged something unbreakable: survivors who refused to let abuse define them. Our parents would spend their remaining years in prison, finally facing consequences they'd avoided through manipulation. But we'd spend our years free, building lives on foundations of truth rather than lies. Justice tasted like relief, mixed with sadness for what might have been with different parents. But mostly it tasted like freedom, the kind that comes from speaking truth, despite threats, choosing integrity, despite costs becoming more than what abuse tried to make us. We were no longer burdens. We were bridges others might cross toward their own freedom from family crimes. The video started with Marcus sitting in my apartment, harsh afternoon light highlighting every line earned through suffering. He'd insisted on recording here rather than a studio, wanting authenticity over production value. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the microphone, but his voice emerged steady. "My name is Marcus Rodriguez. Until recently, I was the golden child in a criminal family. This is my story." I watched from behind the camera as my brother began the hardest conversation of his life. He'd written notes but abandoned them, choosing to speak directly from experience rather than scripts. 6 weeks ago, I tried to end my life, not from depression or mental illness, but from desperation to escape parents who drugged me for control. My mother, who many of you have seen arrested for embezzling millions from churches, put psychiatric medications in my food for 2 years. My father knew and approved because it kept me compliant. The confession poured out medical school failure, mounting debts, elaborate lies maintained through chemical fog. He detailed the gambling addiction that developed while his mind struggled against pharmaceutical chains. Every shameful secret emerged into light. But this isn't just about my failures. It's about my complicity. While my mother drugged me, she was stealing from your churches. While my father managed laundered money, he was planning to frame my sister for their crimes. And I knew something was wrong, but stayed silent, protected by their favoritism while Guadalupe suffered. He looked directly at the camera, eyes clear for the first time in years. I was the pride and joy who brought only shame. My sister was called the burden, who carried our entire family financially. She paid their mortgage for 3 years while they had millions hidden. They stole her college fund, monitored her life, tried to murder her for exposing them, and I let it happen. The recording continued for 40 minutes. Marcus exposed every family secret, every manipulation tactic, every crime he'd witnessed. But more importantly, he took responsibility for his silence, his acceptance of privilege built on his sister's exploitation. If you're watching this as someone trapped in family dysfunction, know that golden children are victims too. Different victims, but still damaged by parents who see children as possessions rather than people. The favoritism that seems like blessing becomes a prison of expectations impossible to meet. He ended with direct address to crime victims. My family stole from you. I benefited from that theft through education funded by embezzlement, through comfort built on your suffering. I'm sorry. I'm working with authorities to ensure every penny gets returned. And I'm entering recovery to become someone worth your forgiveness. We uploaded the video Wednesday evening. By Thursday morning, it had 300,000 views. By afternoon, major news outlets were requesting interviews. The golden child publicly destroying his pedestal while validating victims resonated beyond our situation. Comments flooded in, thousands of people sharing similar stories. Golden children realizing their privilege came from parental crimes. Scapegoated siblings finding validation. Victims of religious embezzlement feeling seen. The video became a catalyst for conversations about family dysfunction and criminal complicity. This changes everything, Jennifer said, reading through legal implications. Marcus just provided public confession that strengthens every case against your parents. No defense attorney can claim misunderstanding when their son details the crimes publicly. Job offers started arriving by Friday. Treatment centers wanted Marcus as a counselor for family trauma survivors. Publishers requested his memoir. Documentary producers proposed films about our story. Everyone wanted to understand how criminal parents created two children who chose justice over loyalty. I don't want to profit from this, Marcus told me, overwhelmed by opportunities. It feels wrong making money from exposing them. It's not profiting from crime. It's building a life despite their crimes. There's a difference. We spent the weekend considering options. A tech company had offered me a senior position after seeing how I documented evidence against my parents. They wanted someone who understood both accounting and investigative procedures. The salary would triple my current income, wealth earned honestly rather than stolen. Marcus decided on the counseling position with a treatment center specializing in family trauma. His experience being drugged by parents while maintaining addiction gave unique perspective for helping others escape similar situations. The salary was modest, but the purpose felt enormous. We're building lives they never imagined for us, he said Sunday evening. You were supposed to remain their financial servant. I was supposed to be their drug dependent. Instead, we're becoming ourselves. Monday brought unexpected visitors. Pastor Williams arrived with 3 church board members and a proposal that stunned us both. We want to hire you as forensic accounting consultants, he explained. Churches nationwide need training to prevent embezzlement. Who better to design those programs than the daughter who exposed the biggest church theft ring in history? The irony felt overwhelming. My mother had stolen from churches while I now had opportunities to protect them. Her crimes had accidentally created expertise that could prevent future theft. Every skill she'd taught me, documentation, evidence preservation, financial tracking, would now guard against predators like her. And Marcus, another board member, added, "We're starting a foundation for family trauma survivors. Your video has already inspired donations. We want you leading peer counseling programs, sharing how you recorded evidence despite being drugged. Your paranoia saved countless victims." We accepted both positions, understanding the universe sometimes provided justice through unexpected redemption. Our parents had created criminals, but raised heroes instead. Their plans had backfired so completely that their victims were hiring us to prevent future versions of themselves. The video's impact continued expanding. Legislators cited it during hearings about financial oversight reform. Religious organizations used it for training treasurers. Families played it during interventions showing golden children how privilege could mask abuse. Marcus became an accidental spokesman for complicated victimhood. Columbia wants me to speak, he told me after reading his 50th university invitation. Harvard too. They want to hear about recognizing family criminality breaking silent complicity. They're creating entire seminars around our story. I accompanied him to several speeches, watching my brother transform from drugged puppet to articulate advocate. He spoke honestly about failure and redemption, about privilege that poisoned and courage found in desperation. Students lined up afterward, sharing their own family dysfunction, finding hope and survival. My forensic consulting expanded rapidly. Churches flew me nationwide to audit their systems, implement safeguards, train volunteers in oversight. Every embezzlement prevented felt like retroactive justice for communities my mother had robbed. Skills developed through trauma became tools for prevention. You've protected approximately $12 million in church funds this quarter alone, my assistant calculated after 6 months. Prevented theft that would have devastated 37 congregations. Your mother stole from dozens, you've protected hundreds. The numbers mattered less than FACE's elderly members whose memorial funds remained safe youth groups, whose mission trips preceded uninterrupted food banks that stayed stocked because thieves couldn't access donations. Every protected dollar represented trust, preserved rather than violated. Marcus's foundation grew equally fast. Donations poured in from people moved by his vulnerability, wanting to support recovery programs for others trapped in criminal families. He hired therapists, social workers, attorneys, professionals who understood that family sometimes meant danger rather than safety. We had our first successful intervention yesterday, he reported during our weekly dinner. Helped a young woman escape parents who were sex trafficking her. Your evidence documentation techniques gave her proof for prosecutors. She's safe now because we taught her what you taught me. These dinners had become sacred siblings choosing connection after decades of manufactured competition. We'd cook together, sharing successes and struggles, building the relationship our parents had prevented. Neither of us drank alcohol, understanding genetic predisposition too well, but we toasted with sparkling water to each small victory over the legacy they'd left. Speaking request from the FBI Academy, I said, sliding him the invitation. They want us teaching about family-based criminal enterprises, how to investigate when relatives are suspects. Full week seminar, impressive honorarium. Together, always together now. They want both perspectives, the exploited daughter who gathered evidence and the golden son who recorded everything. Complete picture of how criminal families operate internally. We accepted understanding our story's value for law enforcement training. How many investigators struggled with family crimes, unable to comprehend parents capable of attempting murder? Our lived experience could help identify patterns, save future victims from suffering alone. The transformations weren't just professional. Marcus had 18 months sober, attending meetings religiously while building healthy habits. He'd started dating carefully with full disclosure about his past. His girlfriend Sarah understood addiction and recovery, having escaped her own gambling-addicted parents. I'd begun therapy, finally processing decades of manipulation with professional help. The therapist specialized in adult children of criminals, understanding unique challenges of loving parents who'd proven monstrous. Slowly, I was learning that hypervigilance could relax, that not everyone meant harm. I'm proud of us, Marcus said one evening, reviewing quarterly reports from both our organizations. We've helped more people in 1 year than our parents heard in 20. That has to count for something. It did count. Every prevented theft, every successful intervention, every family saved from criminal dynamics, all of it balanced against the damage our parents had inflicted. We couldn't undo their crimes, but could prevent others from suffering similarly. Stephanie reached out eventually, my father's secret wife, finally ready to talk. She divorced him after learning about his crimes and bigamy, but struggled with single motherhood while processing betrayal. We met for coffee, awkward at first, then surprisingly healing. Your father spoke of you both often, she said quietly. Not truthfully, but often. Said Marcus was brilliant but fragile, that you were strong but difficult. I think he was jealous of you both. You had integrity he lacked. How are the boys? confused but coping. Therapy helps. They know Daddy did bad things and went away, but we focus on building good lives despite that. Maybe when they're older, they'll want to meet their siblings. For now, we're surviving. I offered financial help my consulting had made me genuinely wealthy, but she declined. The government had returned her legitimate assets and provided victim compensation. She was rebuilding independently, teaching her boys that strength came from honesty rather than deception. Another generation breaking cycles. 1 year after the video upload, Marcus received an unexpected message. A young man named David had seen the recording, recognized his own parents' similar crimes, and found courage to report them. The arrests made news, another church embezzlement scheme exposed by a son who'd learned that family loyalty shouldn't protect criminals. "You saved my life," David wrote. "I was ready to end everything rather than face the shame of my parents' crimes. Your video showed me that surviving and speaking truth was possible, that golden children could choose justice. Thank you for being brave first." Marcus cried, reading it, good tears, healing tears. His vulnerability had created permission for others to escape criminal families. The golden child who'd nearly died from shame had become a beacon for others drowning in similar darkness. "We should write that book," he suggested. "Not for money, but for documentation. Show exactly how criminal parents operate, how children can gather evidence safely when to involve authorities. Make it a manual for escape." We began writing together chapters alternating between our perspectives, the burden child and golden child, examining the same events from different angles, showing how manipulation worked on both sides. Publishers competed for rights, but we chose a university press that would price it accessibly and donate profits to victim funds. Surviving Criminal Parents, a guide to evidence and escape, released to immediate acclaim. Libraries ordered copies for reference sections. Therapists recommended it to clients. Law enforcement used it for training. The book our parents never wanted written became required reading for understanding family-based crime. Reviews poured in from readers who'd found validation and practical advice. Adult children of embezzlers, drug dealers, human traffickers, all finding recognition in our story and hope in our survival. The burden of our experience had transformed into a resource for others carrying similar weight. "Mom would hate this," Marcus observed, signing copies at a bookstore event. "Her crimes becoming textbook material for preventing future versions of her. Dad, too, his money laundering techniques now taught to forensic accountants for identification." "Good," I replied, meaning it. They turned their children into weapons against them. Every person we help escape similar parents is justice multiplied. The signing line stretched around the block. Hundreds of people clutching our book, many crying, all carrying stories of family dysfunction, ranging from mild to criminal. We stayed past closing signing, every copy hearing, every story validating every survivor who'd found courage to seek help. That night, exhausted but fulfilled, we sat in my apartment where Marcus had recorded his confession. The space that had witnessed his lowest moment now held evidence of redemption. Thank you letters, speaking awards, photos from successful interventions. "Remember Thanksgiving 3 years ago?" Marcus asked. "When she called you a burden and I laughed?" "Vividly. That was the beginning of our ending with them, but also the start of our beginning without them. If she hadn't been so cruel, if I hadn't been so complicit, would we have found strength to expose them? Would we be helping others now?" The question lingered. Trauma had forged us into advocates. Crime had created our expertise. Suffering had built our credibility. We'd transformed every wound into wisdom for others, every scar into a map for fellow travelers escaping similar darkness. "I'm grateful," I said, surprising myself with the truth. "Not for what they did, but for who we became despite them, for the work we do now, for having a brother who understands because he survived too. Sisters who save the world together." Marcus smiled, referencing a childhood game before everything went wrong. "Except now it's real. We actually are saving people." We were. One intervention at a time, one protected church fund at a time, one validated survivor at a time. The burden our parents had created had become a bridge others could cross toward freedom. Their legacy of crime had birthed our mission of prevention. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, trials to testify at survivors, to counsel churches to protect. But tonight we sat together as siblings who'd chosen each other over toxic loyalty, who'd discovered that family could be created through shared purpose rather than blood, who'd learned that burdens carried together weighed less than privileges accepted alone. The redemption wasn't just ours, it belonged to everyone who'd read our story and found courage to tell their own. Every person who'd watched Marcus's video and recognized their reality. Every church that implemented our safeguards and avoided theft. Every family that broke cycles instead of perpetuating them. We'd been raised by criminals but refused to become them. Called burdens but became blessings. Designated for destruction but chose construction instead. The ultimate revenge against parents who'd seen children as tools, becoming humans who helped others heal. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning that felt deceptively ordinary. I was reviewing church audit reports when my laptop chimed with a message from an attorney I'd never heard of, Elizabeth Marshall, from Marshall & Associates, specializing in estate law. Dear Ms. Rodriguez, I represent the estate of your late grandmother, Isabella Martinez Rodriguez. Recent criminal proceedings against your parents have triggered sealed provisions in her will. Please contact me at your earliest convenience regarding substantial inheritances designated specifically for you and your brother. My coffee mug paused midway to my lips. Grandmother Isabella had died when I was 12, Marcus 9. I remembered the funeral, the mysterious closed casket, my mother's dry eyes, as she'd complained about the modest inheritance of only personal items and trinkets. I called the number immediately. Elizabeth Marshall's voice carried the professionalism of someone handling delicate family matters regularly. Your grandmother was quite wealthy. She began after verifying my identity. She owned commercial real estate in Austin, held early technology stocks that have appreciated significantly, and maintained a diverse bond portfolio. The total estate value currently exceeds $14 million. That's impossible. My parents said she died with nothing but costume jewelry and old photos. Your parents lied. No hesitation in the lawyer's voice. Isabella structured her will specifically to prevent their access. She created separate trusts for you and Marcus that would activate only upon reaching age 30 or upon your parents' criminal conviction, whichever came first. The room spun slightly. Our grandmother had known. Somehow she'd recognized her daughter's criminal nature and protected us from beyond the grave. While we'd struggled believing in genetic poverty, millions waited in legal protection. Why didn't we know when I turned 30? The trustee your parents were legally required to notify you. They obviously chose not to, hoping you'd never discover the inheritance. Their recent arrests triggered the backup provision, allowing my firm to contact you directly. I thought of the mortgage payments I'd made, the meals skipped, the opportunities declined for financial reasons, all while millions sat in trust, hidden by the same people who'd called me a burden for costing money. The cruelty felt infinite. They'd stolen, not just my payments, but my inherited security. There's more, Elizabeth continued. Isabella left detailed letters for both grandchildren to be delivered with the inheritance. She also documented concerns about her daughter's behavior. Would you prefer receiving these materials in person? I agreed to meet that afternoon, calling Marcus immediately. He was conducting a group counseling session but stepped out when he heard the urgency in my voice. 14 million. His voice cracked. Grandma had 14 million and they told us she died poor. Split between us, 7 million each plus accumulated interest. We've been wealthy for years without knowing it. Silence stretched between us, processing this reversal. From struggling to survive our parents' exploitation to discovering generational wealth they couldn't touch. The grandmother we barely remembered had loved us more than the parents who'd raised us. Elizabeth Marshall's office occupied a historic building downtown, all exposed brick and modern furniture. She greeted us warmly, producing boxes of documents with reverent care. Isabella Rodriguez was a remarkable woman, she began. Immigrated from Mexico at 19, built a restaurant empire from nothing, invested wisely, and saw through everyone, including her own daughter. She handed us each a sealed envelope, our names written in grandmother's careful script. The paper felt old but preserved, waiting 20 years for this moment. I opened mine with trembling hands. Mi querida Guadalupe. It began in Spanish before switching to English. If you are reading this, then my fears about your mother have proven true. I write this knowing she will likely prevent you from receiving it unless circumstances force otherwise. The letter detailed her observations, money missing from family businesses, lies about small things that suggested bigger deceptions, the way my mother looked at people like Marx rather than relations. She'd hired investigators, discovered early thefts, but found no evidence sufficient for prosecution. I could not protect you directly without proof that would satisfy courts, she wrote. So I protected you financially, ensuring my wealth would wait until you could access it safely. I pray this reaches you before too much damage is done. She'd seen everything coming. The exploitation, the manipulation, the designation of me as family servant. Her letter contained apologies for not intervening more directly, explanations of legal constraints, and most importantly, love. You were such a serious little girl, always trying to help, to fix, to carry more than your share. I saw myself in that dedication and worried others would exploit it. Use this wealth to build the life you deserve, free from those who would drain you. Marcus's letter contained similar revelations but focused on different concerns. She'd noticed his eagerness for approval, his malleability under parental pressure. She'd worried about him becoming either puppet or tyrant, urged him to find his own path rather than predetermined ones. The money comes with minimal restrictions, Elizabeth explained after we'd absorbed the letters. Isabella wanted you to have freedom, not new chains. The only requirement is maintaining the commercial properties for 10 years. She believed real estate provided stability wealth. She showed us property photographs. Our grandmother had owned an entire block in Austin's now trendy downtown. Restaurants, shops, offices, all generating substantial rental income. The technology stocks included early Apple, Microsoft, Amazon positions, now worth millions. The woman who'd supposedly died poor had been a visionary investor. Your parents knew, Elizabeth added. They received copies of the will, understood the trust structure. They chose to hide this from you while taking your money. That's not just cruel, it's potentially criminal breach of fiduciary duty. Another crime to add to their extensive collection. They'd stolen my college fund and mortgage payments while sitting on notification of millions waiting for me. The scope of betrayal kept expanding beyond comprehension. What do we do with this much money? Marcus asked, looking overwhelmed. It feels surreal after everything. Elizabeth smiled. Isabella anticipated that question. She left guidance, not requirements, but suggestions based on her values. Education, helping others escape poverty, supporting immigrants. She built her fortune through community connection and hoped you'd continue that tradition. We spent hours reviewing portfolio details, signing documents, accepting responsibility for wealth we'd never imagined. The grandmother we'd barely known had provided more security than parents we'd supported for years. Her love had taken the form of patient money waiting decades to reach us safely. That evening, Marcus and I sat in my apartment surrounded by financial statements and property deeds. The numbers felt abstract, too large to comprehend after years of careful budgeting. We'd gone from counting pennies to managing millions in one afternoon. We could quit working, Marcus said quietly. Never worry about money again, just live off investment income. We could, but would we? He shook his head slowly. The work matters too much. Helping people escape criminal families, protecting churches from theft. Grandma's money doesn't change that mission. Then we use it to expand. Your foundation could help more survivors with proper funding. My consulting could offer free audits to smaller churches that can't afford protection. We turn her gift into multiplication of good. We spent the night planning, not fantasizing about luxury, but strategizing impact. The foundation could open residential facilities for family trauma survivors. The consulting firm could train volunteers nationwide. Grandmother's wealth could protect and heal exponentially. She'd like this, Marcus said, reviewing our plans, using money to prevent what her daughter did, turning inheritance into intervention. The next morning brought media attention. Someone had leaked news of our inheritance, creating headlines about criminal parents hide millions from abused children. Reporters called seeking comments, wanting to know how it felt discovering wealth after deprivation. We released a simple statement. Our grandmother's foresight protected us even when our parents wouldn't. We'll honor her memory by using these resources to help others escape similar situations. The foundation received its first $1 million donation that week from us. Marcus hired additional counselors, expanded services, created scholarship programs for survivors needing education. The money that had waited 20 years began flowing toward healing. My consulting firm transitioned to nonprofit status, offering free services to any religious organization requesting help. We hired forensic accountants, former FBI agents, reformed criminals who understood theft from inside. Grandmother's commercial properties became our headquarters, her business blocks now protecting rather than generating wealth. Your parents have been notified about the inheritance, Jennifer informed us during a legal update. Their lawyer is arguing they deserve portions as Isabella's children. The claim is laughable given the trust structure, but they're desperate. From federal prison, our parents were trying to steal our inheritance after hiding it for decades. The audacity no longer surprised me. They'd claim rights to anything, even gifts, specifically protecting us from them. Let them try, I said. Grandmother knew exactly who they were. She built these trusts as fortress walls against their greed. They can exhaust themselves against legal barriers she erected. The inheritance transformed our capabilities, but not our purpose. We still worked full days, still counseled survivors, still protected vulnerable organizations. But now we did it without personal financial worry, able to focus entirely on mission rather than survival. Marcus started therapy specifically addressing wealth guilt. Growing up designated as golden child while secretly broke had created complex relationships with money. Now actually wealthy, he struggled with deserving comfort after years of manufactured suffering. I keep thinking I should give it all away, he admitted during our weekly dinner. Like keeping any makes me like them. Grandmother didn't protect this money for us to waste it on guilt. She knew we'd use it wisely because she saw who we really were, not who our parents tried to make us. Keeping resources to sustain good work isn't greed, it's strategy. I had my own adjustments. After years of hyper-vigilant budgeting, spending felt foreign. My therapist helped recognize the difference between necessary frugality and trauma-driven deprivation. Slowly, I learned that buying new shoes when old ones wore out wasn't extravagance, but self-care. Your grandmother's true gift wasn't money, my therapist observed. It was seeing you clearly when your parents couldn't. The wealth just represents that recognition in tangible form. She was right. Every document in the trust showed Grandmother Isabella had understood us. She'd structured Marcus's portion to encourage independence, while mine promoted the helpful nature she'd recognized. Even from beyond, she'd parented better than the living. The commercial properties required attention leases to review maintenance, to coordinate tenant relationships, to manage. I hired a management company but stayed involved learning the business Grandmother had built. The restaurant spaces told stories of her journey from immigrant to empire builder. One tenant, an elderly man who'd run a bookshop for 30 years, shared memories. Isabella never raised rent unfairly, said businesses needed stability to serve community. Even when property values soared, she kept increases reasonable. We all mourned when she passed. That became our model reasonable rents that allowed small businesses to thrive rather than maximum extraction. The properties generated plenty without gouging. Some tenants had been there since grandmother's time, creating continuity she'd have appreciated. Marcus met Stephanie's boys, our half-brothers, for the first time. The inheritance had included provisions for any additional grandchildren born to my daughter, suggesting grandmother suspected the bigamy. The boys would receive trust funds at 25, protected from their father's influence. Aunt Isabella must have been nice, 7-year-old Sean said, reading a simplified version of her letter. She made sure we'd have college money even though she never met us. The generational wealth would skip our criminal parents entirely, flowing from grandmother who'd earned it to grandchildren who'd use it wisely. The cycle of exploitation ended with legal documents and careful planning by a woman who'd refused to enable her daughter's greed. On the anniversary of that Thanksgiving dinner where everything changed, Marcus and I stood in Austin surveying our grandmother's properties. The buildings that had waited 20 years for us now housed our offices, our foundation, our mission to prevent others suffering. She saved us, Marcus said simply. Not just financially, but completely. Knowing someone saw through the lies, planned our escape, loved us enough to wait decades for safety. That matters more than millions. I touched the brass plaque on the main building, Isabella Martinez Rodriguez Center for Family Justice. We'd renamed it in her honor, transforming her business legacy into our healing mission. Every survivor who found help here would know her name, her story, her refusal to let criminals win. We were never burdens, I said, understanding, finally settling deep. Not to her. She saw us as investments in justice she couldn't achieve directly. Every person we help is interest on her principle of love. The sun set over Austin as we stood there, grandchildren of an immigrant who'd built fortune from nothing, children of criminals who'd tried stealing everything, siblings who'd chosen truth over comfort. The money mattered less than the message someone had loved us before we'd even proven lovable, protected us before we knew danger existed, planned our freedom before we'd felt chains. Tomorrow we'd return to work, counseling survivors, protecting churches, building the better world grandmother had envisioned. But tonight, we simply stood grateful in the space she'd created, finally understanding that inheritance meant more than money. It meant being seen, valued, protected by someone who'd recognized that children weren't burdens, but blessings waiting to bloom. Grandmother Isabella had given us more than millions. She'd given us proof that love could transcend death, outlast crime, and triumph over exploitation. The burden had become legacy. The pain had become purpose. The grandmother we'd barely known had loved us better than the parents who'd raised us. Her final gift wasn't just wealth, but the knowledge that someone had always been fighting for us, even from beyond the grave. 1 year later, I stood in my kitchen checking the turkey's temperature, while voices filled rooms that had once held only silence. The house I'd bought with Grandmother Isabella's inheritance sprawled comfortably built for gatherings I'd never imagined hosting. Today, every room pulsed with life. Marcus arrived early carrying homemade stuffing and his girlfriend Sarah. They'd been together 8 months. She understood addiction recovery and the complexity of surviving criminal families. Her own parents had run a prescription pill mill before federal agents shut them down. Shared trauma had become shared healing. "Smells like home should smell," he said, hugging me with the easy affection we'd developed. "How many are we expecting?" 26 at last count. Maybe 30 if the Johnsons make it. Pastor Williams and his wife Helen arrived next, their marriage stronger for having survived his confession. The church had kept him on understanding that grace meant accepting human frailty while demanding accountability. He'd become a powerful advocate for financial transparency, turning his failure into teaching moments. "Brought my famous sweet potato casserole," Helen announced, adding it to the growing spread on the granite island. The one your mother always claimed was hers at church potlucks. We laughed, discovering how many of my mother's signature dishes were stolen recipes had become a running joke. She'd taken credit for everything, even other women's cooking. Small thefts that preceded larger ones, patterns we now recognized clearly. Stephanie arrived with her 3 boys, Sean, Samuel, and baby Sebastian. The divorce from my father was final. Her life rebuilt with help from the Victims' Compensation Fund. She'd returned to school studying accounting with plans to help other women discover financial deception in marriages. Aunt Lupe. Sean ran to me 8 years old and irrepressibly energetic. "Did you make the cranberry sauce from scratch like you promised?" "Of course. Want to help me finish the green beans?" He nodded eagerly, standing on the step stool to reach counter height. These boys were family despite their origins in deception. Children couldn't choose their parents any more than we had. They deserved aunts and uncles who showed up consistently, proving some adults kept promises. The doorbell continued ringing as guests arrived. Maria Santos brought her children, faces bright with anticipation, instead of last year's worry about empty holidays. The church's recovered funds had restored all stolen charity programs, with extra for expansion. Her family was thriving with consistent support. 3 women from Marcus's foundation came together, survivors of various family crimes, who'd found each other in group counseling. They'd started calling themselves the Phoenixes, rising from ashes of criminal families toward chosen connections. Today marked their first holiday with people who understood. "I've never been to a real Thanksgiving," one admitted quietly. "My family used holidays for drug deals, everyone too distracted by football to notice exchanges." "Then welcome to your first healthy one," I said, meaning it. "Only thing exchanged here is recipes and really bad jokes when Marcus gets going." My consulting firm colleagues arrived in a cluster: former FBI agents, reformed criminals, forensic accountants, all united in preventing religious theft. We'd audited 300 churches this year, discovering 4 active embezzlement schemes before major damage occurred. Every saved dollar felt like redemption. The dining room couldn't hold everyone, so we'd set tables throughout the connected spaces. Fine china mixed with paper plates, crystal glasses alongside solo cups. The formality my mother had demanded, everything matching everyone performing, held no appeal. This was about gathering, not impressing. When Elizabeth Marshall arrived, I nearly cried. The estate attorney had become more than legal counsel. She'd shepherded us through inheriting millions while processing grief for a grandmother we'd wished to know better. She brought wine and wisdom, both equally welcomed. "Isabella would be so proud," she said, surveying the controlled chaos of people finding seats. "This is exactly what she envisioned: family by choice, not chance." Marcus tapped his water glass as conversations settled. Still sober, still strong, still growing into the man our parents' drugs had tried to prevent. He looked confident in ways that had nothing to do with golden child status, everything to do with earned recovery. "Before we eat, I wanted to say something." His voice carried clearly through connected rooms. "Last Thanksgiving, I was in a psychiatric ward after trying to end my life. Lupe had just survived our mother's murder attempt. Our family had shattered because we finally exposed the truth about criminal parents." Nods around the tables from people who understood hitting bottom before building up. Several guests had spent previous holidays in hospitals, prisons, or hiding from dangerous relatives. Rock bottom was familiar territory here. "But look at us now," Marcus continued. "Every person here chose truth over comfortable lies, chose healing over hiding, chose to build something better from the rubble of what tried to destroy us. We're not just survivors, we're thrivers." To chosen family, someone called out, raising their glass. To chosen family, we echoed drinks, clinking in agreement. The meal unfolded with easy conversation. No one performed happiness, it existed genuinely in shared understanding. Stories emerged between bites, people finally safe enough to speak truth without judgment. Criminal parents were common denominators at many tables. My mother sold my birth certificate 3 times to different identity thieves, one woman shared. I didn't officially exist until age 23 when the FBI sorted it out. My father made us kids deliver heroin in our school backpacks, another added. Said no one suspected children. I was 8 when I realized those weren't vitamins. Each story was met with acceptance, recognition, and often similar experiences. The weight of secrets lifted when shared with those who understood that parents could be predators, that families sometimes meant danger, that survival required difficult choices. Stephanie's baby started fussing and I reached for him automatically. Little Sebastian settled against me, tiny fingers grasping mine. This innocent child would never know his father, the criminal who'd lived multiple lies. But he'd know aunts and uncles who chose honesty, who'd build healthy patterns for him to follow. "You're good with him," Stephanie observed. "Natural maternal instincts despite everything. Or because of everything. Knowing what not to do is its own teacher." The afternoon stretched lazily, people moving between indoor conversations and backyard games. The Phoenixes had organized touch football, their laughter carrying through open windows. Pastor Williams and several others watched from deck chairs, offering commentary and encouragement. In the kitchen, Helen and I cleaned dishes while watching the yard activities. "This is what church should feel like," she said. "People gathering, honestly supporting each other through hard things, not the performance your mother turned it into. She's in federal prison for 40 years minimum." I updated. "Dad got 60 for the financial management aspects. They'll both die there." "How do you feel about that?" I considered while drying plates. Relieved, safe, sometimes sad for what could have been with different choices, but mostly grateful they can't hurt anyone else. "Forgiveness doesn't mean enabling," Helen said gently. "You can forgive them personally while supporting consequences legally. Grace has boundaries." Her wisdom came from experience forgiving her husband's affair while supporting his public confession. She'd shown that accountability and love could coexist, that forgiveness didn't require accepting continued harm. Pastor Williams was lucky she'd chosen rebuilding over revenge. As sunset approached, people began sharing gratitudes, not forced performances, but genuine acknowledgments of growth and connection. Marcus thanked his counseling supervisor for taking chances on former addicts. Maria praised the community that had rallied when charity funds vanished. The Phoenixes celebrated each other for making holidays feel safe again. I'm grateful for hidden microphones. One foundation client said drawing laughs, recorded my parents planning to sell me to traffickers. Now they're serving life while I'm in nursing school. Dark humor threaded through lighter moments survival mechanism for those who'd seen too much too young. We understood that laughter didn't minimize trauma but made it bearable, that finding absurdity in abuse was sometimes the only sane response. When my turn came, I looked around at faces that had become family through shared understanding, rather than shared blood. Last Thanksgiving, my mother called me a burden, said I'd always been one. Today I understand she was right, I was a burden. To criminals who wanted compliance, to thieves who demanded enabling, to abusers who required silence. I paused, gathering thoughts. I'm grateful for being that burden. It means I was never comfortable with their crimes, never easy for them to control. The burden they complained about was actually conscience they couldn't corrupt. So thank you, Mom, for confirming I was doing something right. Applause filled the room, not for performance, but for truth transformed. Everyone here had been someone's burden, someone's disappointment, someone's failure to comply with dysfunction. Those labels had become badges of honor, proof we'd resisted corruption even when it cost everything. One more thing, I added. I'm grateful for all of you who proved family isn't about blood but about choice, who show up consistently, speak truth lovingly, and build healthier patterns together. You've taught me that home isn't a place but people who see you clearly and choose to stay. Marcus stood raising his glass of sparkling cider. To my sister who saved my life by saving herself, to everyone here who proves family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up when the facades fall. More toasts followed to recovery, to justice, to futures free from past patterns. Elizabeth Marshall shared stories about grandmother Isabella that brought tears and laughter. The woman who'd protected us from beyond the grave became present through memories of her strength and foresight. As guests began leaving, each departure included long hugs and promises to stay connected. The Phoenixes were planning a New Year's gathering. Church members invited everyone to legitimate holiday services. The foundation scheduled ongoing support meetings. This wasn't ending, but continuing. Marcus stayed late helping clean while processing the day. Remember fighting over who got the turkey leg as kids? You always won. Golden child privileges. Some privilege, drugged into compliance while you faced reality clear-eyed. He paused, considering. I think Grandma Isabella knew, saw which grandchild would survive to use her protection. That's why she structured the trusts to need both of us. Neither could access without the other's survival. The insight felt true. Our grandmother had bound us together through legal documents ensuring we'd need each other to access her gifts. Even if our parents had succeeded in destroying one of us, the other would have been protected from inheritance theft. Brilliant woman planning for contingencies. This is what she wanted, I said, gesturing at remnants of the gathering. People using her resources to build better lives, properties sheltering survivors instead of generating maximum profit, wealth creating connection rather than isolation. We did it, Lupe. Built the family she envisioned from the ashes of what she couldn't prevent. We stood in my kitchen, purchased with inherited millions, filled with chosen family hosting healing instead of harm. The grandmother we'd barely known had given us tools to build what our parents had tried to prevent, lives of meaning, connection, and truth. My phone buzzed with a message from David, the young man whose parents' crimes Marcus's video had exposed. Happy Thanksgiving to the siblings who saved my life. Your courage created permission for mine. Forever grateful. Similar messages arrived throughout the evening from viewers of Marcus's confession readers of our book, Churches Protected by Our Programs. The burden of our story had become a bridge for others crossing from criminal families toward chosen freedom. As midnight approached, Marcus prepared to leave. Sarah waited in the car, patient with siblings who needed processing time. Their relationship modeled healthy support, consistent but not codependent, loving but not enabling. Same time next year, he asked at the door. And every year after, building traditions worth keeping. We hugged goodbye, siblings by birth, friends by choice, partners in transforming trauma into purpose. The boy who'd laughed at our mother's cruelty had become a man who helped others heal. The burden and the golden child had both evolved beyond assigned roles. Alone in my house, I walked rooms still echoing with laughter, dishes drying in the kitchen, furniture slightly askew from gatherings, tangible evidence of connection. This was what home felt like when not weaponized against inhabitants. Opening my laptop, I began writing thank you notes to attendees. Not obligatory social performance, but genuine gratitude for people who'd made isolation impossible. Each person who'd shared their story, offered support, or simply shown up had given gifts beyond measure. The last note went to Grandmother Isabella, though she'd never read it. I thanked her for seeing clearly, planning carefully, and loving grandchildren she'd barely known better than parents who'd raised us. For proving that family could transcend blood, time, and even death when built on truth rather than manipulation. Tomorrow would bring continued work survivors to counsel churches, to protect patterns, to interrupt. The mission continued, daily inheritance multiplying through impact. But tonight had proven something essential: we'd survived more than our parents' crimes. We'd survived to build exactly what they'd tried to prevent: authentic connections based on truth. Tables where anyone could speak honestly. Homes that sheltered rather than trapped. Families chosen for health rather than endured through dysfunction. The burden had transformed into blessing, but not through forgetting pain, through alchemizing it into purpose, through refusing to perpetuate patterns, through choosing creation over destruction, even when destruction felt easier. As I climbed stairs to bed, I passed photos from today already printed and framed. Marcus laughing with the Phoenixes, Stephanie's boys playing with church children, Pastor Williams and Helen dancing in the backyard, chosen family choosing joy, documented for remembering. My mother had called me a burden at Thanksgiving, meaning it as destruction. But burdens were just responsibilities others didn't want to carry. I'd carried truth when she preferred lies, conscience when she chose crime consequences, when she demanded enabling. That burden had saved us all. Now surrounded by evidence of lives rebuilt, I understood the deepest truth. Sometimes the greatest gift was someone showing you exactly who they were, freeing you to become exactly who you're meant to be. My mother's cruelty had been accidental kindness, releasing me from false obligations to build real connections. This Thanksgiving, no one called anyone a burden. Here everyone brought something to the table, and everyone left fuller than they came. Here lived proof that family meant choice, that home meant safety, that love meant showing up consistently with truth and compassion. Here finally lived healing. The burden had become a bridge. The curse had become calling. The ending had become beginning. And I was grateful, completely complexly, truly grateful for all of it.